In a remote place among the mountains, a majestic complex of temples rose under a clear sky. The monk, the living Buddha Master Mu-san, calmly asked, "Did you say you want to know about Wai Yonho?" The young historian nodded determinedly and replied, "Yes, that's right. I am compiling materials to document his history." Master Mu-san laughed softly as he opened his fan and murmured, "Ho ho, Wai Yonho, the radiant martial sovereign Wai Yonho." With an expression of deep reverence, the monk continued, "He was a very benevolent and upright man. Buddha must have sent him to us." The young man smiled with satisfaction as he took notes and asked with curiosity, "Oh, that's just as I thought. So what was he like in his daily life?" Upon hearing about his daily behavior, his usual appearance, the monk's body began to tremble, confusing the young historian. Suddenly, the monk's face twisted into a sinister grimace with shining eyes as he cursed softly, "Damn it, I can't do this." The historian, sweating and completely stunned, stammered in disbelief, "Excuse me, damn it." With a loud arg, the young man was violently thrown out through the doors of the Ping clan of Hubei, landing face down on the ground. Ping Dojuk, the supreme elder of the Ping clan of Hubei, roared furiously, "Why Yonho this, why Yonho that? Why the hell would a miserable and worthless human?" He finished his shout while looking with contempt at the historian on the ground. "Someone like you comes here." While the old man ordered, "Bring a whole bag of salt and sprinkle it around here," the young historian could only exclaim in astonishment, "What?" The historian's thoughts focused on Wai Yonho, the radiant martial sovereign, a legendary figure who ended the era of chaos. He recalled how some call him the greatest of all time, others the greatest chivalrous warrior. As he fled through the forest, one question persisted in his mind. But why does everyone avoid talking about him? Quickening his pace, he reinforced his resolve. "As a historian, I have the duty." With sweat running down his face but a determined look, he concluded his thought, "To document even the hidden sides of history." Upon arriving at a ruined cabin in the forest, he felt renewed hope. "And today, I may finally discover the reason." An eccentric old man, the divine mad dog of the beggars' sect, greeted him with a booming laugh. "Ho ho ho, so you were kicked out of Shaolin and the Ping clan of Hubei? Ha ha ha." The historian explained with a sigh, "Yes, and their responses were practically the same wherever I went the moment I mentioned the name Wai Yonho." The divine mad dog smiled cunningly and stated, "Of course they would react that way." Confused by the elder's response, the young historian could only ask, "Pardon." The elder began his tale, transporting the scene 100 years back to the Wai clan of Guangdong to speak of that man. He continued with a surprising statement. He was the worst kind of person, while a young Wai Yonho was shown lazing in bed. In a memory, a 12-year-old Wai Yonho firmly declared, "I want to become the strongest." The narrator describes, "There once was a boy who dreamed of becoming the greatest under the heavens. Born into a martial clan, he was raised learning the chivalry of warriors." The boy smiled with an air of confidence. Thanks to his upbringing, he already knew the fastest path to the top, and that path was, the image of a hand full of scars over broken swords revealed the answer. Relentless effort. The young Wai Yonho reflected with a relaxed air. "Yes, no matter how talented you are, nothing is achieved without effort." But for a boy with such will, while thinking that effort is the only true path, there was a small problem. The problem was that, as he watched the sunset, he always felt that it was already too late to start today. Thus, the young man would sit calmly to watch the dusk, postponing his training for another time. With a serene expression, he made a firm decision that allowed him to relax completely. Immediately after deciding, he would throw himself back onto his bed to rest. Already curled up, he thought with a smile, "What a shame. Today was supposed to lay the foundation for being the best. Well, I'll sleep deeply tonight and train tomorrow." Moments later, a gray-haired man entered the room and found the boy fast asleep on the floor. The man gave a stern order, "Get up," but the boy didn't even flinch, drooling as he slept. Losing patience, the man shouted in a thunderous voice that shook the room, "I said get up." The young Wai Yonho finally sat up and greeted the man with a sleepy smile. "Oh, you're here." The man, Wai Jianghan, patriarch of the Wai clan, looked at him sternly and asked, "Do you know what time it is?" "I saw the sun," Yonho replied nonchalantly, and when asked, "And you're still lying in bed," he retorted, "because the sun is still setting." With a vein throbbing on his forehead, Wai Jianghan continued his interrogation. "Do you know how long you've been locked in this room?" Yonho considered it with a foolish expression, mumbling to himself. "Was it 2 days? Maybe 3? No, I think it's 2. It's been 4 days, you useless brat." His father exploded. "You've been lying around wrapped in a blanket for 4 damn days." He continued his tirade, shouting, Doesn't your back hurt from lying down so long? Even a bear would turn over from the sweat after 3 days. The young man laughed cheerfully and replied, Hee Tilda, that's why I get up from time to time. You don't have to worry about me. Suddenly, his father's furious face loomed over him, making the boy jump and utter a confused am. Yonho tried to justify himself with a sly smile. Actually, I tried to train, to which his father asked, and, he answered, every time I opened my eyes, the sun was already setting. With twisted logic, Yonho cheerfully explained, when the sun sets, you have to sleep. That way you can get up early the next day to tra. Before he could finish, his father, consumed by anger, grabbed him violently by the foot. Held upside down, a puzzled Yonho could only say, huh, while his father roared, today, I'm finally going to fix that rotten attitude of yours. As the sun set over the grand Y family house, the boy's screams echoed while his father shouted, I'm going to straighten you out once and for all. Later in the clan office, Patriarch Y Jianghan sat at his desk, letting out a deep, stressed arg. The clan administrator, Zhou Bang, approached and asked knowingly, Is it about the second young master again? Who else would I worry about? The patriarch responded wearily, to which Zhou Bang tried to console him. Don't worry, sir, he will mature soon. With a sigh of resignation, Y Jianghan covered his face and murmured, Ha, it's all my fault. The narration reveals that Y Jianghan went on a martial dual pilgrimage the year Y Yonho turned 2. During his absence, the matriarch Han Sangha was left alone to raise her children, Y Sanho, the young Y Yonho, and the yet unborn Y Suryun. At that time, Y Jianghan thought the journey would last at most 2 years. However, he became involved in several incidents. It was not until 8 years later that he was able to return home, where his family awaited him. Although he earned the honorary title of righteous and chivalrous swordsman, during that time, the cost was high. Reflecting on it, he realized with anguish that what he had lost was too great. When he returned home, his once sweet wife had become fiercer than a tiger, greeting him with an icy stare. And his beloved son, whom he thought would not be a problem at all, was just a tender memory. That boy had become a lazy slacker, foolishly laughing in his bed. Overwhelmed by regret in his office, the patriarch let out a heavy, sweaty sigh. Administrator Zhou Bang tried to cheer him up with a smile and said, Don't worry, there must still be a way. What way? Jianghan asked, to which Zhou Bang responded mysteriously. Have you forgot? He will return soon, leaving the patriarch wondering. Oh, that's right, the patriarch exclaimed with a laugh as he remembered, and Zhou Bang confirmed. Yes, after 3 years he will finally return from the academy. A malicious smile appeared on Y Jianghan's face as he murmured, Yes, heh, why Yonho, that little brat. At that moment, while lounging about, a chill ran through Yonho as he thought, Why am I suddenly getting chills? Unaware that there was someone he truly feared, he looked around with a sudden feeling of apprehension, simply letting out an oh. The ominous presence was that of his older brother, Y Sanho, who entered the room, leaving Yonho stammering in surprise. Brother. Sanho stood in front of his younger brother and asked coldly, How long have you been asleep? To which a nervous Yonho replied, WH, when did you get here? With a piercing look, the older brother simply responded, I asked first. Visibly intimidated and sweating, Yonho could only stammer, EA. Sanho's cold and calculating gaze locked onto his younger brother, increasing the pressure without saying a word. Yonho panicked and shouted, No, it's not what you think. I trained early this morning. I just took a nap because I was tired. While thinking, damn it, when did he come back? You trained? Sanho asked skeptically, to which Yonho, sitting on the bed, nodded vigorously and replied, Yes. To test him, Sanho pointed to a candle on the other side of the room and ordered, Then use a technique to split that candle in two, leaving his brother to say a simple, Ha. With a challenging look, Sanho continued, Let's see how much you've improved in these 3 years. Accepting the challenge, Yonho stood up, drew a sword, and prepared himself in front of the distant candle. Sanho crossed his arms impatiently and urged him on. What are you doing? Go ahead. Holding the sword with sweaty hands, Yonho began making excuses. I mean, we're indoors and it could be dangerous. I'll take care of that, Sanho shouted, losing patience. Just show me what you've got. Completely cornered, Yonho could only stammer a nervous response. All right. With an expression of pure effort, he thought to himself resignedly, here I go. Finally, Yonho moved, executing an elegant sword form that sent a circular wave of energy across the room. With a look of complete boredom, Yonho lazily raised his sword. From a considerable distance, he observed his tiny target across the large hall. Suddenly, he planted his foot firmly on the ground, preparing to unleash his power. In an explosion of movement, he leapt through the air in a dynamic spin, his sword tracing an arc of blue energy. His face, once lazy, transformed into a mask of intense concentration as he executed the technique. Sanho's stoic expression cracked for a moment, revealing a glimpse of genuine surprise at his brother's skill. Yonho unleashed the powerful technique called the Ascending Dragon, a flashy and advanced sword move. After the impressive display of energy, he was left breathless and visibly exhausted from the effort. When the air settled, the candle remained in its place, intact and quietly burning as if nothing had happened. Realizing his absolute failure, Yonho's face twisted in panic as he screamed internally, "I've screwed it up." After Yonho's failure, his older brother began his evaluation with a cold voice. 3 years have passed. He continued his reprimand with disappointment. 3 years are enough to master a sword technique, to move to the next level. But you, Sanho delivered his crushing final verdict, have worsened compared to 3 years ago. Later that night, a tense silence took over the Y clan residence under the starry sky. The family gathered for dinner, but the atmosphere was tense, with Yonho sitting apart at a side table. The tension was so palpable that Yonho, looking ill, thought to himself, "I'm going to have indigestion. I'm sure of it." The patriarch asked his eldest son, "How is life at the martial academy? Have you encountered any difficulties?" To which Sanho calmly replied, "It's fine." Sanho elaborated with a maturity beyond his years. "If there were no difficulties, it wouldn't be training. I believe they are essential to surpassing myself." With a mixture of pride and sorrow, his father nodded and said, "You have suffered a lot in my absence." Sanho deflected the compliment. "You had it harder, father, being away for so long," and skillfully changed the subject. "So, are there other problems?" In the midst of the meal, Sanho suddenly set down his chopsticks decisively, drawing everyone's attention. He looked at his father and said, "There is still one problem left." His mother turned and asked softly, "What's wrong, son?" The patriarch Wai Jianghan grew stern as Sanho replied, "It concerns Yonho." "Yonho?" the mother asked again, a trace of worry appearing on her face. Sitting at a separate table, Yonho flinched and shouted, "What about me?" He looked at his older brother with a panicked expression as Sanho said, "I think." Sanho looked ahead and declared firmly, "We need to take Yonho to my martial academy." Yonho's face twisted in pure terror as he realized that this was the reason why. Even masters like Grandmaster Mu San and Ping Dojug gritted their teeth just at the mention of Wai Yonho's name. It was then, with the young Wai Yonho's hand closing around the hilt of his sword, that the great story began. But back then, seeing that lazy young man, no one could have imagined that this boy, who was already complaining, "Hey, Sanho, let's rest a bit before we go," would one day shake the entire world. And so, Wai Yonho was forcibly taken to the martial academy, leaving his family somewhat shaken. His younger sister, Wai Suryun, cried inconsolably, shouting, "Wah, don't go." His mother told him, "Take care," while his father roared with tears in his eyes, "Come back a man." As his sister said goodbye, Yonho shouted, "Don't cry, I'll return." And his father's proud laughter was quickly silenced by a stop laughing from his wife. The historian, having heard the entire story, grew thoughtful and silently processed the revelation. Finally, with new understanding in his eyes, the historian stood up and said to the elder, "I see. So that was the kind of person he was." The divine mad dog let out one last thunderous laugh and gave the young man a pat on the back. "Ha ha, now you know, right? A legend like no other." The two brothers set off on horseback through a lush and sunny landscape. The journey went smoothly, with one brother riding with unshakable calm and grace. Well, for Wai Sanho, of course, because his younger brother, Yonho, could barely stay on the horse, letting out a With sweat beading his forehead, the exhausted Yonho asked weakly, "Are we almost there yet?" Without even turning around, Sanho responded with brutal frankness, 10 more days left." The answer struck Yonho like a thunderbolt, making him shout in disbelief and horror, "T10. We'd have arrived in 5 if you knew how to ride a horse," Sanho pointed out, sparking a quarrel in which Yonho defended himself by shouting, "I told you I'd never ridden before." Yonho began to complain loudly, pleading, "Let's rest, Tilda, I'm so tired. I feel like my back and my butt are going to explode." In his desperation for a break, he pointed at a hill and exclaimed, "Look there, those people are resting too." Sanho's expression changed drastically from calm to alarm when he saw what his brother was pointing at. Sanho dismounted from his horse and cautiously approached the two figures lying motionless beneath the twisted tree. "What, where are you going?" shouted a confused Yonho from his horse, not understanding the sudden tension. With a somber expression, Sanho stopped over the bodies, confirming his suspicions. "What are you doing?" Yonho asked as he approached, to which his brother replied gravely, "We arrived too late. They're all dead." Sanho confirmed as the camera revealed the lifeless face of one of the victims. Seeing the corpses, Yonho couldn't hold back a scream of pure horror and disgust. What? Ignoring his brother's panic, Sanho calmly pointed out a detail on one of the bodies and said, "Look at this." He showed a gruesome flower-shaped wound on the victim's chest and explained, "This is a technique called the reassuring flower palm." Sanho clarified that the technique used to be called the crimson flower palm, but its name changed because of a rapist named Seo Juak who used it for his crimes. "A rapist?" Yonho exclaimed, terrified. "Are you saying he's around here?" Sanho continued his analysis with a somber face. "He attacks women who climb the mountains. These bodies mean Seo Juak ambushed them while trying to catch a woman." With a sharp look, he came to an alarming conclusion. "In other words, there's a woman in danger somewhere around here." "I'll be back, stay here," ordered Sanho as he sped off at incredible speed, leaving a stunned Yonho exclaiming, "Huh!" Yonho panicked upon realizing his situation and shouted into the void, "Are you telling me to stay here with these corpses?" "Hey!" he yelled desperately as he watched his brother disappear over the horizon. Left completely alone in the middle of the field, the young man froze in fear. Sweating profusely, he looked around paranoid, flinching at every sound. Even the horses neighed nervously, heightening the tension in the silent air. His terrified gaze kept returning again and again to the dreadful image of the lifeless bodies, just a few meters away from him. With an expression of pure terror and cold sweat, Yonho reached a simple conclusion. "I'm lost." As time passed, dark and threatening clouds began to gather in the sky. Yonho's frustration exploded and he shouted, "Liar, why is it taking so long? He should have taken me with him." His anger faded, giving way to genuine worry as he thought, could something have happened? There's no other reason for him to be so late. Night fell completely, and the howls and roars of wild beasts echoed in the darkness surrounding him. Clinging to the reins, he decided, "I have to do something. I could become a tiger's dinner if I stay here." A sudden lightning flash or a terrifying noise made him scream in pure panic. UAGH. Just after the first raindrops began to fall, gently striking the leaves around him. The drizzle quickly turned into a torrential downpour, soaking him as he remained alone beside the corpses. Looking up at the sky in utter despair, Yonho murmured to himself, "Ah, I am truly lost." Suddenly, a distant, sharp scream pierced the sound of the rain, echoing from the dark mountains. AAAAGH. Shivering under the torrential rain, Yonho gritted his teeth and wondered, how did I end up like this?" With a cry of Chiwaye, he overcame his fear and loaded the corpses onto the horses to get them to safety. Panting from the effort, he dragged the horses up a slippery slope, thinking, "Damn it! I can't leave them as tiger food, and I can't bury them in this rain." With all his strength, he focused on a single goal as he battled the mud and wind. "I need to find shelter." Suddenly, one of the horses, terrified by the storm, reared violently, neighing in panic. "Why?" Yonho shouted, desperately pulling on the reins. "Aren't you listening to me?" The relentless storm continued to lash the mountainside, turning the terrain into a deadly, slippery trap. A lightning bolt illuminated the chaos just as the runaway horse threw him into the air and pushed the other horse over the cliff. Yonho could only let out a piercing scream, "Kuagh," as he fell into the darkness alongside the horse and the corpse. He crashed violently onto the muddy ground, rolling uncontrollably as the last horse fled terrified into the night. With a painful ACKK, his back slammed into the ground, leaving him breathless from the impact. Fortunately, his fall was cushioned by a dense thicket of leaves that caught him at the bottom of the slope. He passed through the thick foliage, which softened his landing before he touched the ground. "UEGH," groaned Yonho as he lay motionless on the ground, completely stunned and aching from the fall. As he slowly sat up, he grabbed his aching back and thought angrily, my back, that damn horse." Suddenly, his anger halted as he became aware of his surroundings, murmuring, what?" He looked up and saw the rocky formation above him, realizing with surprise, a cave. His face lit up with pure joy and relief as he shouted, "Great! I found shelter from the rain." His joy turned to astonishment when he saw the two horses, their bodies still tied up, standing at the cave entrance, exclaiming, "You guys!" But deep within the darkness of the cave, without his knowledge, a person lay tightly bound, struggling silently. Once inside the cave, Yonho tied the horses to a rock, lamenting, I can't even hit them." Looking at his dirty clothes and hands, he sighed with disgust. "What a mess! That's why I prefer to stay at home." With a bit of foresight, he thought, "I left a mark outside the cave, so hopefully my brother will find me." As he watched the relentless rain, his thoughts drifted. Meanwhile, frustrated and overwhelmed, he threw himself on the ground and shouted, "I don't know, I'm just going to sleep." He curled up on the cold stone floor of the cave, trying in vain to find comfort or rest. However, sleep did not come and his mind was plagued by genuine worry. I hope nothing has happened to my brother. Lying on his back, he tried to calm himself by thinking, no, he's strong. He stood up and murmured to himself in the darkness, I'm sure he'll come be. But exhaustion finally overcame him, and he fell into a deep sleep standing in the middle of the sentence. While Yonho slept deeply, a mysterious blue aura began to glow and emanate from his body. The energy intensified, gently lifting his unconscious body off the cave floor. Carried by this mystical force, his floating body was slowly dragged toward the depths of the cave. The speed increased, and he was propelled through the dark passages like an arrow of blue light. He remained completely unaware, peacefully snoring as he was carried through the air. Finally, with one last surge of energy, the force gently set him down on the floor of an unknown chamber. Hours later, Yonho began to wake up, murmuring a confused as he opened his eyes. He found himself looking up at a vast, unfamiliar ceiling, with strange swirls of green mist floating in the air. Where am I? He wondered aloud, realizing that the ceiling looks different. Standing up, he examined the enormous cavern, thinking, it looks like the cave I was in. Did I go deeper? Did I somehow roll all the way here? A deep, resonant voice shouted, destined human, causing Yonho to let out a sharp scream. Hiagh. Startled, he stumbled and fell clumsily onto his back on the cave floor. Sweating and confused, he looked around desperately, searching for the source of the mysterious voice. A sphere of bright blue light appeared before him, declaring, welcome to the destined place, successor of My Radiant Sword. Yonho cautiously pointed at the light and asked in a trembling voice, are you speaking through this shiny thing? Yes, I have transcended the limitations of a physical being, the voice replied. I speak to you from beyond time and space. The ethereal will then gave him a command. Accept MYWILL and rule the world. Yonho's terrified mind could only arrive at one conclusion as he screamed, a ghost. As he shrank back in fear, the spirit tried to calm him. Do not fear, I am already dead. Only My will remains here. The will continued. I have prepared this for someone who would come here after me, so accept my will without hesitation. Yonho's fear turned to cunning as he thought, W8, this situation feels familiar. A cave without human presence? He continued analyzing, observing the pristine surroundings. He looked at the glowing orb and concluded, it's the will of an old man. With wide eyes as the pieces fell into place, he realized, this. His face broke into a smile of pure euphoria as he exclaimed inwardly, a fated opportunity. Heaven rewards me for my kindness, he declared dramatically. I won't even have to go to the academy if I become strong here. He eagerly accepted the will's offer to teach him the radiant sword, shouting, of course. And okay, the will explained. If you train hard here for 30 years, you should be able to somehow replicate my techniques. Yonho's joy vanished instantly, and with a cold sweat drop, he asked incredulously, 30 years. Yes, just 30 years. The will confirmed, but Yonho cut it off abruptly with a weight as the horrible reality hit him. With a dazzling smile, Yonho declined the offer. I don't think this destiny was meant for me. Look for the next person. The ancient will fell into stunned silence, unable to process the rejection. Finally, the glowing sphere pulsed with indignation and shouted, what? Yonho relaxed on the ground and cheerfully explained, yes, Tilda, I'd rather pass this up than stay here for 30 years, Tilda. Back in the present, the narrator, the divine mad dog, leaned forward and said, but that encounter is how the loser, why Yonho, he continued, as the image showed a powerful hand gripping a sword, came to be so strong, concluded the story, showing scenes of legendary battles. The final memory was of the legendary and powerful warrior he would become. In the past, Yonho smiled and repeated, yes, I don't think this is destiny. Find someone else. Then goodbye, he shouted as he ran out of the cave, happily abandoning his supposed great opportunity. Just as he turned to leave, the spirit's voice shouted, W8, causing him to stop and ask, wait a second, the spirit pleaded, its voice now filled with panic. From the sphere of light emerged the ghostly form of a majestic old man, who introduced himself as Beak Muhan. Yonho watched the apparition with a look of deep mistrust and skepticism. I was right, you're a scammer, shouted Yonho, accusingly pointing at the spirit who stood stunned. Scammer, roared the indignant spirit, but Yonho continued. You pretended to be one thing, and when it didn't work, you revealed your true identity. Beak Muhan tried to reason with him, explaining, I wasn't pretending. I really am a spirit who has abandoned his body. With crossed arms and puffed cheeks, Yonho silently mocked the idea of a spirit who has abandoned his body. To prove his theory, Yonho shouted, Hiya, and threw a punch with all his might directly at the spirit's face. To his astonishment, his fist passed through the ghost's ethereal head without meeting any resistance. As Yonho fell backward in shock, the spirit asked exasperatedly, "What are you doing?" The irrefutable proof caused Yonho to scream in pure terror. Why you're a real ghost? Hya? No. Ghost, exclaimed the spirit. This is the art of spiritual transmission, something only very high-level martial artists can use. Well, we call them ghosts. Completely losing patience, the spirit roared with ethereal fury. I said I'm not. The scene returns to the present, with the historian and the divine mad dog sitting by a campfire under a starry sky. The elderly narrator concluded his story with a sly smile. That's how Yonho met his master. The historian reflected aloud, amazed. Spiritual transmission arts? Does something like that really exist? It's a technique that only martial artists of the highest level can achieve, the elder confirmed seriously. With his gaze lost among the stars, the historian asked, "Then, who is a martial artist capable of using that ability?" The divine mad dog bowed with an intense look and replied with another question. "Do you know the Sword Emperor?" The historian was well acquainted with the reputation of the Sword Emperor, thinking, "It's a fact. He is, after all, the strongest person in history." He continued reciting the man's titles. "The greatest person of the Beak clan of 1,000 swords, and the master who will be remembered in the history of martial arts." "Yes," confirmed the divine mad dog. "I'm talking about Beak Muhen, the radiant sword. The man later called the Sword Emperor is the master of the radiant martial sovereign." The historian was left speechless, stammering, Really? But didn't he live 300 years ago?" "That's right, he is from a generation already forgotten," the elder explained. "However, it is true that he forged Yonho." Amazed, the historian supposed, "How incredible! Then the radiant martial sovereign, upon learning that, must have begged to be his disciple immediately, right?" Yonho? The old man laughed. "No, it was quite the opposite. It was the Sword Emperor who had waited 300 years for a descendant, who desperately needed a disciple at any cost," the narrator continued, while a flashback showed the spirit shouting, "You must become my disciple." In the past, Yonho was trying to sneak away, complaining, "Why are you throwing a tantrum? I'm not even from the Beak clan, I'm leaving." The enraged spirit lunged at him, yelling, "Did you think I would let you go so easily?" Just as he tried to flee, a huge stone door slammed shut on the cave with a thunderous crash, knocking him down with the shockwave. Yonho muttered, dazed as he looked at the now completely blocked exit. The spirit of Beak Muhen laughed heartily. Ha, it's a super thick stone door. With your current skills, you'll never break it." Then with a sly smile, he offered a deal. "But if you learn my martial arts, you'll be able to cut through it like paper and leave Tilda." Well, there's no other choice." Yonho sighed resignedly as he slipped his hand into his robe. Thinking he was about to attack, the spirit shouted at him, "I told you can't cut that stone door with your current skills." Completely ignoring him, Yonho pulled out a small dagger and began methodically scraping the stone floor. The ancient spirit watched this strange activity, completely confused and speechless. "What are you doing?" the spirit finally asked, to which Yonho replied obviously, "Can't you see? I'm digging a hole." He explained his plan with exasperating logic. "It's still stone, so it will wear down if I scrape it with metal. I'll be out of here in 1 or 2 years. Are you going to do that for 1 or 2 years? The spirit asked, grinding his teeth in frustration. "Haha, that's funny coming from someone who talked about training me for 30 years, Yonho mocked, causing the spirit to think. "This bastard is crazy. I can't even kill him with blows." Desperate, the spirit began to bargain. "I'll let you out after 20 years. But Yonho replied coldly, "I don't like you," before adding 20. "No, that's too long," Yonho said indifferently. "I'd consider it if you said 3 years. The spirit was scandalized. "Learn my martial arts in 3 years. Not even if Zhang Sanfeng came back to life could he do that." "Oh, then I guess we're not meant to be," Yonho responded, turning around to continue with his original plan. As Yonho resumed his rhythmic scraping, the spirit gritted his teeth in an agony of pure frustration. Yonho stopped and raised his hand, declaring his final and firm offer. 5 years. Completely defeated, the spirit desperately agreed. "Give me 5 years. I will do whatever it takes to make you the strongest in the world in 5 years." Yonho paused, considering the offer with a new look of interest. The strongest martial artist in the world in 5 years. Yonho reflected. "Besides, I've never heard of a spirit as vivid as him. If that's the case," he concluded, "he really could have been the strongest master in the world." Having made up his mind, he thought enthusiastically, "Yes, let's become masters with this opportunity. 5 years is quite cheap." Pointing at the spirit with renewed fiery determination, he shouted, "Fine, I'll give it a try." Back in the present, the narrator explained. But the Sword Emperor was also unlucky, since the person he met at the end of his life ended up being that guy, the story concluded, showing Yonho deeply asleep just after accepting the deal. In the past, Baek Myuhan's spirit was seen roaring in anger at his sleeping disciple. "Hurry up and wake up, you bastard." Yonho slowly woke up, looking at his furious master with a sleepy, drooling expression. "Huh." He immediately began to complain. "I'm so tired. Don't you sleep?" "Ah, of course. You're dead. Well, I'm human and humans need to sleep." Trembling with contained rage while cursing the heavens, Baek Myuhan apologized and begged. "Fine, I'm sorry. Now let's train." The disciple the spirit received at the end of his life was a lazy bastard who yawned. Tilde train right after waking up. As Yonho asked, "Isn't there an easier way to learn?" His master shouted in frustration, "At this rate, it will take 50 years, not 5. HMPH. That's why I need to find a talented master," Yonho complained, thinking his master would be less annoying if he kept quiet. Yonho's constant complaints made the spirit explode with frustration, forcing him to apologize repeatedly for things that weren't his fault. The spirit's anger was so intense that, if he had a body, he would have suffered a chi deviation and collapsed from rage. He regretted his own desire to pass on his martial arts, which forced him to endure the torment of such a disciple. "If I had a body, I would give him a beating and then teach him," the spirit thought with a sigh as Yonho rolled on the ground laughing. Suddenly, Yonho stopped and asked, "Oh, but master, how did you do that?" To which the spirit replied, "Do what?" "Drop that stone door." Yonho clarified with a bright idea. "Can't you use that power to manipulate my body and teach me martial arts?" "I simply pulled the cord of a device I had already prepared," explained the spirit, adding that it is not connected to the body when Yonho asked how. "I just used psychic levitation to pull the cord using only chi," the spirit explained calmly. But as he spoke, a sudden and profound realization seemed to strike the ancient master. He burst into manic, ecstatic laughter, shouting at the heavens. "Why didn't I realize this before? Kek. He laughed like a madman, causing Yonho to shout, "What the hell's wrong with you, old man? Have you finally lost your mind?" "I was too obsessed with not having a body," the spirit realized. "Thanks to you, I've learned something good." "What are you muttering about?" Old Yonho's question was abruptly cut off when an invisible force struck him in the face. Completely stunned by the invisible hit, he could only stand there, confused. Another small rock shot out from the wall and hit him, leaving him utterly baffled. "Thanks to you, I realized that even without a body, I can still move rocks whenever I want," the spirit exclaimed triumphantly. "Oh, old man," stammered Yonho, terrified as the spirit ominously continued, "and if I can move rocks, I can do things like this," the spirit exclaimed with a manic laugh as he levitated multiple spheres of energy. Terrified, Yonho shouted, "Wit, Ansha, I mean master, let's talk." His pleas were useless, as the hellish training began immediately, forcing him to block brutal attacks. From that day on, Yonho's screams echoed in the cave while the training of Baek Myuhan and Yonho continued day and night. He learned swordsmanship tirelessly during the day, subjected to an unrelenting regimen. His face contorted with effort as he deflected a constant barrage of energy attacks. And at night, the two engaged in heated debates, testing his mind as much as his body. Even while sleeping, he trained using the unparalleled mythical dream arts that Baek Myuhan taught him. While his mind struggled in the dream, his physical body twisted and groaned in pain. Kuugh. Through this unceasing torment, his life became the sword. Time faded away in a whirlwind of blue energy and relentless training. Bruised and exhausted, his body moved on instinct. His life had become the sword. Under the satisfied and cunning gaze of Baek Myuhan, Yonho had no time to be lazy. Among shattered rocks and the echo of swords, this was how 5 years passed in an instant. And when he returned at the end of his training, he rested his hand on the stone door. With a strength he had not possessed before, he effortlessly pushed open the enormous door that had once imprisoned him. The cave door, his prison and his crucible, opened once again to the outside world. A different man, scarred and mature, stepped into the sunlight and took a deep breath of the fresh air. "I'm finally out," he said with a confident smile, ready to shake the world. The scene shifts to one day earlier, where a wounded Yonho lies on the ground murmuring, "Let me sleep a little longer," as a voice calls to him. Yonho sat up, complaining irritably, "Heavens, I said I would sleep a little longer. Don't you believe me?" A moment of confusion overwhelmed him when he realized the voice wasn't the one he expected, and he murmured, "The spirit of his master, Baek Myuhan, appeared before him with unusual seriousness and commanded, "Come here." Sitting cautiously before the floating spirit, Yonho asked, What is happening?" The spirit began to speak with an air of melancholy. "I have studied martial arts all my life. My hope was to see their end." He continued with regret. "In the end, by pursuing only the martial arts, I became a grumpy old man, treated at a distance by my clan." "What's wrong with him today?" thought Yonho, completely bewildered by his master's unusual behavior. "When I think about it, it was obvious why my clan didn't come to look for me," admitted the spirit sadly. He confessed his greatest regret. "After all, I abandoned my children and my family for the martial arts." Floating alone in the darkness, he concluded his lament. "I thought that witnessing the end of the martial arts would give me everything." The spirit continued his lament, extending a ghostly hand full of remorse. "But I was wrong," he finally admitted, acknowledging the mistake of his solitary quest. With a smile of newly gained wisdom, he said, "Martial arts are a human affair, so to not walk with people to see the end of fencing makes no sense." "You helped me realize that," he said to a completely astonished Yonho. With a gentle look, the spirit reflected, "I taught someone for the first time. I was angry and upset," he admitted, recalling his frequent outbursts during training. "I also felt happiness and learned the joy of watching you grow," he continued, recalling his student's progress. In a warm glow of light, he concluded, "And I also learned about affection." "What's wrong, master?" Yonho asked uneasily. "You act as if we're never going to see each other again." With a sad and resigned smile, Baek Myuhan replied, "Yes, the time has come," leaving Yonho with a confused question mark. What are you saying? What time? Do you think I'm going to fall for that?" Yonho shouted, refusing to accept the truth. He continued frantically, "You said we would train for 30 years. Only 5 have passed. You have to exist for 25 more years." "I said that," the spirit admitted calmly, which only enraged Yonho more, who retorted, "So what?" Baek Myuhan explained, "The internal chi I gave you as an elixir so you could live here without eating is not something easy to maintain." His ethereal form flickered as he admitted, "I have no more power left. It's time to say goodbye." Yonho's anger turned to despair. Why? Why didn't you tell me? If you had, I would have gone out to find food and come back to train." With a sad, understanding smile, the spirit responded, "If you had left, I'm sure you would have come back. Yes, yes, I understand how you feel." Ignoring his disciple's outburst, the spirit began his final words. "Anyway, I enjoyed the time we shared," he said fondly. "I wanted to see you travel the world, but this is fine too." With one last gentle farewell smile, the master looked at his only disciple for the last time. "In my eyes," began the spirit, sharing his final vision for his disciple, "I can already see you clearly traveling the world," he said, describing a heroic future for Yonho. "Go see the world, keep it inside you," he advised. "If you do, everything else will come naturally." "Master," Yonho whispered, while the spirit warned him, "don't make the same mistakes I did." As his spirit began to fade, he said calmly, "Even if I can't see you again, even if no one else knows of my existence, your movements, your swordsmanship," he continued, speaking of his immortal legacy, "I am within them," he assured, his essence now intertwined with his student's art. "So even if you aren't outstanding or great, it's okay," he whispered, freeing him from the burden of greatness. Master," Yonho cried with tears, "you can't leave now. There's still so much I haven't learned." He begged desperately one last time. "Just a little more, just one more day. Just be happy," were the spirit's last words as it vanished into nothingness, and Yonho reached out in a futile attempt to stop him. In the now silent and empty cave, Yonho walked alone, enveloped by the echo of his master's departure. He stopped in the dimness, whispering one last time to the air, "Master." Finally, the pain overwhelmed him and he collapsed, crying out in frustration, "You could have told me a little earlier." The scene jumps to the present, where an enraged Yonho shouts, "So this is why he left without warning me." Holding his writing-covered clothes, he cursed, "When did he write all this? Damn old man, he should have left properly." Before disappearing, his master had left him one last farewell gift, a deadly trap that made Yonho scream, "What the hell is this?" Baek Myuhan had left a message on Yonho's clothes that, in summary, explained his final plan. It said that, since Yonho's training was incomplete and he would not train again, he had installed a function in his body. This function was his master's internal elixir, which would force his martial arts to improve, although not in a simple way like automatically getting stronger. The message explained, with a diagram, that if the growth of his body didn't keep pace with the internal elixir, his internal energy would be absorbed by Baek Myuhan, and he would die in an explosion of power. In short, you'll die if you're lazy about training, you brat, Yonho read, shouting furiously. That damn old man was up to no good. But upon reading his master's advice to travel the world to become a great person, his anger calmed and he muttered, Damn master. The message continued with a list of tasks, starting with, The first place you must go is Rulin, which left Yonho puzzled. Wait, damn master, he shouted to the sky. How many places are you telling me to go to? While stretching, he resolved, I was going to go home. But I'll come back after settling everything, so don't worry, mother and father. With a new maturity on his face, his expression hardened with a quiet determination. Looking at the path ahead, he accepted his fate, saying, I have to do what I must. And so, with the world stretching out before him like an inverted cave, his solitary training began anew. I won't come back, just so you know, Yonho said to the empty cave, bothering me till the end. As he walked away down the path, he wondered aloud, Heavens, but where is Rulin? The cave, which had been his world for 5 years, was left behind, silent and empty. However, at its entrance, the spirit of Beek Muhen appeared one last time to see his disciple depart. The spirit let out a loud, joyous laugh that echoed across the hills. Kek, kejajajajaja, you bastard, he laughed. Die like a mummy if you don't learn about the world. Ha ha ha, I can't let you live anywhere in the middle of nowhere, tilde. Looking at the vast landscape, he concluded, the world is too wide to let you do that. With a proud smile, he added, and it would be a waste of your martial arts, bastard. I was happy because of you, said the spirit in one last heartfelt farewell before fading away forever. Meanwhile, Yonho suddenly stopped on his path, puzzled by a familiar sensation, the smell of grass, and time passed, carrying our traveler to the bustling city of Kaifeng. A solitary figure, covered with a tattered and worn cloak, appeared on the outskirts of the city. His feet, wrapped in dirty bandages, showed the scars of an incredibly long and harsh journey. It was Wai Yonho, now gaunt and looking much older, who asked in a hoarse voice, Excuse me, is this Kaifeng? He approached a man sitting on a log, who seemed to be a person of authority in the area. The leader of the Beggars' Sect branch, Jang Il, thought, Who is this mummy? Startling Yonho, who replied, Why yes. When Yonho said he had a question, Jang Il got straight to the point. Money. And to Yonho's surprise, he declared, Of course, nothing in this world is free. Jang Il stared at him intently, making it clear that the rules of his territory were absolute. His voice sounds like someone barely in their 20s, but his face looks 50. The leader thought, perplexed by Yonho's strange appearance. I would like to do it for free since it seems we are in the same field, said Jang Il, and when Yonho asked, he clarified, Yes, since we are both beggars. How do you mean I look like a beggar? Yonho exclaimed indignantly, to which Jang Il responded firmly, Obviously, you are a beggar. Jang Il dismissed him. If you don't have money, go away, come back with something after begging. But Yonho retorted, Why would I beg if I'm not a beggar? It seems like you could make a fortune just by sitting with a basket. The leader of the beggars told him, Why waste your talents? Yonho's firm refusal left the sect leader speechless for a moment. Suddenly, Jang Il grabbed his hands desperately and proposed, Hey, do you want to work with me? With what? Yonho asked, and the scene shifted to him calmly meditating over a huge pile of copper coins. Later, in a rundown room, Jang Il knelt and bowed deeply before Yonho and the mound of money he had earned. Kejajajaja, the leader laughed maniacally, making half a year's operating costs for this branch in half a day. The news spread like wildfire, and the other beggars celebrated the arrival of the god of wealth. With a friendly smile and offering him food, Jang Il finally asked, So what do you want to know? A list of locations, hobbies, and specialties of famous scholars, Yonho requested, to which the leader replied, That's easy, then added, and famous blacksmiths, receiving that too. As Yonho continued with his long list of requests, Jang Il exclaimed in amazement, What, all of that? I'll tell you, come back in 7 days, said Jang Il, but Yonho, lying down, replied, I have nowhere to go, so I'll stay here. Stay here? Jang Il hesitated before giving in. Fine, stay. A decision he would deeply regret a few days later. A beggar ran toward him in panic, shouting, Branch leader, there's trouble. But Jang Il dismissed him. What trouble could beggars possibly cause? I think we're going to starve to death, shouted the beggar, leaving his leader completely stunned. The reason was that the townspeople were now chasing away all the other beggars, shouting, Get out of here, fake beggars. What is going on? Demanded Jang Il as he ran with his men toward the source of the commotion. Upon arrival, the scene he found left him speechless and utterly horrified. A crowd led by arrogant youths had gathered and was lecturing someone. Hey, bastards, if you're beggars, at least you have to. At least be at this level, shouted the noble youths while the crowd murmured, I've never seen anyone so. Moved by his pitiful appearance, people threw coins at him while saying, "Eat something, bastard." Jang Il watched everything with an expression of absolute and pure horror, unable to believe what he was seeing. With a simple display of his talent, Wai Yonho had completely conquered the world of the local beggars. Later at the beggars' camp aboard, Yonho yawned and announced, "Hey, I'm thirsty." Acting as his personal servant, Jang Il immediately shouted, "Hey, water, bring me water," while another beggar massaged his legs. "This bowl is dirty," Yonho complained, and his words became law as Jang Il struck the subordinate who had brought it. "It's also lukewarm," he added. "Bring cold water from the damn mountains. How many times do I have to tell you?" While Yonho enjoyed the luxuries, good, how nice. Jang Il clenched his fists, trembling with suppressed rage. Damn it. Tears of humiliation rolled down Jang Il's face as he thought, I am a branch leader of the beggar sect, and I have to act as a servant to that stupid beggar. "Hey, Aunt," Yonho said disdainfully, while Jang Il bitterly thought, "But if I kick him out, my men will starve." As the beggars complained about their pains, Jang Il grew desperate. "When will the damn information arrive? At this rate, we'll all die." Just then a messenger came running, shouting triumphantly, "The information is here." Jang Il's face lit up with an almost mad joy as he shouted with relief, Finally." Meanwhile, Yonho, oblivious to the commotion, simply sighed with pleasure as he received a massage. The information, obtained with great effort, was presented to Yonho, who looked at it with an expression of total boredom. "Is that all?" Yonho asked disdainfully. "Do you really want to sell something like this for money?" Leaving Jang Il completely confused. Without giving any further explanation, Yonho simply held out his hand and ordered, "Give it to me." Jang Il unrolled the scroll and began to read silently, his expression gradually shifting to one of serious concentration. "Are these bastards trying to kill us all?" he thought in horror. "This is only half of what was asked for. This is bad, I have to do something." Jang Il thought in panic, but Yonho only asked, "Is it because I didn't pay you enough?" Determined to act before this bastard does, Jang Il grabbed Yonho and said, "We can't have you begging on the streets. Come this way. I'll give you information," he promised as he dragged him toward an opulent brothel. A beautiful woman greeted them with a mocking smile. "How strange to see you here, fox dog." Her piercing green eyes appraised the newcomers with cold intelligence. The woman was none other than Gui Nangnang, the leader of the Kaifeng branch of the Hao Sect. While Jang Il offered a respectful greeting, Yonho mocked behind his back, repeating, Fox dog, is that your title, a dog? You're a little bitch, huh? Ha 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 ha," Yonho whispered, causing Jang Il to think, "That damn bastard." The mockery continued, with Yonho interrupting every attempt Jang Il made to speak with a simple, repeated bitch. Gui Nangnang finally spoke. "Surprising. The leader of the beggar sect coming to the Hao sect for information. We are rivals. What brings you here?" "I'm not asking about the beggar sect. I've brought a client." Jang Il tried to explain while Yonho whispered to him, "Bitch, bitch." With a vein throbbing on his temple, Gui Nangnang asked irritably, "Are you pulling my leg?" "It's not the beggar sect that's asking," Jang Il insisted, pointing to his ragged client. Gui Nangnang looked at Yonho with disdain and asked, "But the client is a beggar." "Are you insulting us?" she hissed furiously. "We don't have information to sell to the beggar sect." "I'm not from the beggar sect," Yonho said calmly while pinching Jang Il's cheek, who complained, "Stop pinching me." Gui Nangnang stood up and warned them, "I will have to take action if you continue to insult us like this. Keep in mind that we have our pride." "Isn't the Hao sect an intelligence organization?" Yonho asked, his calm voice cutting through the tension. He continued his verbal assault. "But you don't even know if I'm from the beggar sect or not. You don't even master the basics." Despite his anger, a slight smile of intrigue appeared on Gui Nangnang's lips. "Gongmu," Gui Nangnang called, and both Yonho and Jang Il wondered who that was. A figure emerged from the shadows and said, "Madam," to which she immediately asked, "Who is he?" The voice from the shadows reported, "We don't know about him, but he is not from the beggar's sect." Proven so humiliatingly wrong, Gui Nangnang blushed with shame and anger. "See," Yonho said with a smug smile, "you can sell me information now, can't you?" "No," she replied with a defiant, crazed smile. Get out," leaving both visitors stunned. Yonho simply let out a brief, contemptuous laugh. You don't have a business mind," he criticized. "I offer to pay and you still refuse." Turning around, she sighed sarcastically. "I guess it won't be long before the Hao sect is finished." She turned to threaten him. "You better watch your mouth if you don't want to see your members cut." But he calmly replied, "Well, I'm not wrong, am I?" The term, old woman, made Gui Nangnang's face contort with indescribable anger. "Are you insulting us right now?" she shouted furiously, but Yonho, with his hands behind his head, just replied nonchalantly, "Eh." Having reached her limit, Gui Nangnang roared, "Gongmu, teach him a lesson." And her subordinate responded, "Madam." "Yes, madam," yelled the assassin as he launched his attack with blinding speed. Like a vengeful shadow, Gongmu's figure lunged at Yonho with a murderous intent in his eyes. "Enno," shouted Jang Il, futilely trying to protect his god of wealth from the incoming punch. With supernatural calm, Yonho pushed Jang Il's face aside and simply said, "Move." He caught Gongmu's devastating punch with a single hand effortlessly, the shockwave from the impact exploding around him. Gui Nangnang's eyes widened, his arrogance shattered by disbelief at Yonho's strength. Jang Il also looked on in astonishment, realizing at that moment that the pathetic beggar was a disguised monster. "Ah," Yonho said to himself, looking at his hand with slight surprise at his own immense strength. "Why, you're a martial arts master," yelled Jang Il, stunned, while Yonho casually apologized for the crater in the ground. "It's just my instinct to counterattack if someone hits me," he explained. "It would have been much easier if you'd warned me you were going to attack." "I knew he probably learned martial arts," thought a sweaty Jang Il, "but I didn't expect him to be this strong." With a sigh, Yonho blamed his late master. "It's all that old man's fault." With tears in her eyes, Gui Nangnang said, I didn't know you were such a prestigious client," to which Yonho replied, "What are you talking about? You've been talking to me all this time." Despite her change in attitude, a shadow of suspicion crossed the sect leader's gaze. She looked at Jang Il with distrust and said, "It doesn't seem like you're here with good intentions," surprising the beggar's leader. "I am not here to fight," stammered Jang Il. "I only came to ask for help with information my sect couldn't obtain." As Yonho dragged the unconscious guard away, Gui Nangnang asked Jang Il, "You know this is like bringing a tiger into a rabbit's den to ask for some fur, right?" "Fine, I'll believe you," Gui Nangnang finally said, her expression calculating. "Thank you," sighed Jang Il, flooded with immense relief. "But giving you information is another matter," she continued coldly. "It's true that your client wounded some of my people." With a hard look, she declared, "We will need compensation for that." "Compensation," repeated Jang Il, cold sweat running down his back. "There is a simple rule in the unorthodox world," she explained. "Blood for blood, a life for a life." At her call, 4 shadows, a group of elite assassins, appeared instantly, their swords pressed to Jang Il's throat. "Everyone has a fancy way of showing up in this place," Yonho remarked with a smug smile, unimpressed. Flanked by her assassins, Gui Nangnang threatened, "Since you have wounded one of ours, you won't leave unscathed." "Hey, stop," Jang Il whispered, but Yonho complained loudly, "I told you it was a mistake. I just hit him lightly because he tried to hit me first." "This skeletal bastard," Gui Nangnang thought, boiling with rage at Yonho's insolence. "The customs of the unorthodox Murim are simple," she declared as her assassins readied themselves. "An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth." "That sounds like usual bullshit," Yonho mocked, prompting a terrified Jang Il to say, "Hey, I told you to stop." One of the assassins explained calmly, "We're just going to take a bit of meat from your face, and then we'll be done." "Hey, sorry to tell you," Yonho interrupted, raising a hand to stop them. He pinched his sunken cheek and complained, "But I have no fat on my face. I haven't been able to eat well lately." The continuous mockery made Gui Nangnang grit her teeth, her face twisted with fury. "Kill him," she roared, finally unleashing her 4 assassins on Yonho. "I thought you were only going to take a little meat from my face," Yonho asked, feigning surprise as the 4 shadows lunged at him. "Do you want to kill me now?" he asked calmly as the first blade whistled toward his neck. Yonho looks down with a slight smile, thinking to himself, "That's a lot of interest. How scary." One of the assassins lunges forward with a fierce expression, his knotted hand reaching out to attack. The assassin's face contorts in a silent scream of pure agony. His attack has been effortlessly stopped. Yonho remains with his head down, his incredible muscular physique emanating an overwhelming pressure. Gui Nangnang's eyes open wide in complete surprise and disbelief, his mouth agape as he lets out a silent scream. As the assassins are helplessly thrown through the air around him, Yonho looks up calmly and orders, "Nobody move." The assassins' swords clatter onto the blood-stained ground as their bodies fall, while Yonho's thought continues, "I really don't." A powerful blue aura sprouts around Yonho, cracking the ground beneath his feet as he finishes his thought. "Want to kill yet?" Jang Il watches the scene, his face beaded with sweat and etched with pure terror. Looking on in horror with a visible scar on his neck, Gui Nangnang stammers in fear. His aura is. Yonho recalls the spectral image of his master's teaching. "My master told me that if someone is willing to attack once, they will be willing to attack 3 or even 4 times, so I must never allow that to happen." Looking up as the memory fades, Yonho thinks with conviction. I don't like that old man, but he has never said anything wrong. Gui Nangnang's eyes widen in growing horror as he realizes the gravity of his mistake, thinking, I messed with the wrong person. He's not someone I can handle. With his back turned, Yonho strengthens his determination to control his overwhelming power, thinking, I need to calm down. If I do something wrong. He looks across the room at a tense Gui Nangnang, finishing his thought with grim certainty. This entire branch of the Hao sect could come to an end. Regaining some composure, Gui Nangnang strokes his chin and asks, What do you want? Then, after a simple answer, he insists, Yes, but what information? Jang Il nervously presents a worn document explaining, I have the papers. I hope you can fill in the blanks here. Gui Nangnang looks at the paper in his hands with a puzzled expression, thinking, Is this all? Did they bring a monster like him to the Hao sect because they couldn't solve such a simple matter? Addressing them from the other side of the large hall, she declares, It's not difficult at all. I just need some time. Can you wait? After receiving an affirmative response, she says, Then give me about 15 minutes. A dark aura surrounds Gui Nangnang as she smiles menacingly and adds one last condition. As for the leader of the beggar sect branch, let him come see me. Causing Jang Il to let out a terrified scream. A loud ha echoes through the otherwise silent, ornate room. Yonho bursts into laughter, leaning back and pointing at his companion with wild joy. Puajajaj. With a cheek puffed up like a dumpling, Jang Il grumbles, Shut up. But Yonho keeps mocking him. Your face looks like a dumpling. Did it hit you? Ha 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 ha. Jang Il angrily points at him, defending his defeat. Does that woman look like an ordinary member of the Hao sect? While Yonho replies casually, I guess the beggar sect is nothing, seeing that the Hao sect is beating you up. As an intimidating image of Gui Nangnang hangs over them, Jang Il desperately explains. She is the daughter of the Hao sect's leader, the future leader of the Hao sect. She used to eat miraculous medicines like they were food and had all kinds of good stuff. He raises his hands in frustration, shouting with an agonized expression, How could I possibly be a match for her? While Jang Il continues gesturing angrily at Yonho, Gui Nangnang appears behind him, watching the scene with a cold expression. Sometime later, Yonho respectfully presents the complete document, stating, I have brought the information, while a battered Jang Il stands beside him, and Gui Nangnang accepts it with a simple, Oh, thank you. Now seated at a table with her, Gui Nangnang looks at the two men and says, However, we have our own rules, prompting a confused huh from Jang Il. Approaching, Yonho calmly clarifies the rule with a slight smile. Information fees, causing Jang Il to jump and ask worriedly, how much? A small chibai version of Gui Nangnang appears and bluntly states the price. 5 nyang. Thinking the price is low, Yonho extends a handful of bronze coins, saying, That's cheap, here you go. Jang Il shouts in protest, Why is it so expensive? Which makes Yonho look at his own hand and clarify that the price is 5 silver nyang. Gui Nangnang calmly explains from her desk, Actually, it was quite high-security information. That's why it's expensive. And Yonho accepts this with a simple, oh well. Yonho quickly gets up to leave, prompting Jang Il to ask, Where are you going? To which he replies with a simple question, What do you think? With a look of weary determination, Yonho announces, I have to go earn my 5 nyang of silver, leaving Jang Il silent in surprise. Jang Il desperately clings to Yonho's leg, shouting, No, I brought you here for a reason, causing Yonho to look down with annoyance and ask, What? What am I supposed to do then? Almost crying, Jang Il pleads, Wait a second, before clenching his fists in anguish, thinking, damn it. A pile of 5 shiny silver ingots is shown, as a narrator explains that Jang Il spent all his money, and even signed an IOU to pay the fee. Jang Il sweats and cries as he sadly looks at a single silver ingot, lamenting, My heart aches, while Yonho watches him from the back and asks, Hey, are you crying? As Jang Il complains loudly, Hey, you damn bastard, I had to spend all my savings. Gui Nangnang reads the report and comments, This is definitely very thorough. I guess you guys are on another level. Yonho holds up a folded letter with a smile asking, I also want to send a letter to Guangdong. Is it going to be expensive? Gui Nangnang looks him in the eye with her own proposition. It will be more expensive than a companion agency, but I'll do it on the condition that you answer some of my questions. When the interrogation begins, Yonho reveals his name and that he is 17 years old, which causes a stunned Jang Il to shout, What? You're younger than me. Gui Nangnang appears visibly uneasy about his age. A drop of sweat runs down her temple as she thinks, S17. His martial skills are not those of a 17-year-old. Regaining her composure, she thoughtfully strokes her chin and repeats his name to herself as she connects the dots. Why Yonho? Why Yonho? Her eyes widen suddenly as she makes the connection, exclaiming in surprise, Why Yonho from Guangdong? Are you the second son of the Y clan of Guangdong? Yonho looks up from the table, his face hidden by his hair, and asks with genuine surprise, Huh, you know me. Jang Il leans forward, his face a mask of disbelief as he asks, Why Yonho? The second son of the Y clan of Guangdong? Are you Sanho's younger brother? While Gui Nangnang confirms, of course. The Y clan of Guangdong requested that we find you. Yonho turns to his companion with an expressionless face, asking, Huh, you know my older brother? To which Jang Il enthusiastically replies, Of course, I'm his friend. While Jang Il fumes silently, Gui Nangnang confirms the letter's destination and warns, It will take at least 10 days to arrive. But Yonho calmly responds, That's fine. They waited 5 years. 10 more days won't hurt. Gui Nangnang gracefully picks up a piece of red cloth from the table and offers it, saying, Also this. Her eye is shown in a close-up as she explains the function of the cloth. It marks you as a special guest of the Hao Sect. If you tie it wherever you want, an informant from the Hao Sect will come to find you. Yonho takes the cloth and asks, Oh, for free? To which she bluntly replies, No, while internally reflecting that there is no one like him in the Central Plains. After he dismisses the offer as useless, Gui Nangnang quickly reconsiders and offers, In that case, I'll give you free information next time, prompting him to ask, Really? She looks at him intently, explaining her reasoning. It's especially for you. We don't want to lose you as a client because of what happened before. Yonho turns to the downcast Jang Il with a wide smile and asks, Nothing really happened, right? But Jang Il frowns in response. My face looks like a dumpling and I'm completely out of money. A small, cheerful chibai version of Yonho appears to deliver one last insult. Well, it usually happens. You're a loser. Later, walking down a busy street, Jang Il continues lamenting his fate. My money, damn it. While shouting at Yonho's retreating back, I'm not. Yonho looks over his shoulder with a slight smile, offering wise advice. Money comes and goes. Besides, a beggar shouldn't be so greedy. Connect with your beggar roots. Jang Il looks completely defeated, clenching his fist while thinking with total frustration. I can't even beat up this guy. Making a gesture of disdain, he tries to part ways forever, saying, Anyway, you got the information you wanted, so we won't have to see each other anymore, right? Yonho grabs him by the arm to stop him as Jang Il protests. Wait, well, there's a problem, provoking an annoyed, and now what? From Yonho. With a dazzlingly bright and innocent smile, Yonho cheerfully announces his problem. I have no money. Jang Il's face twists into a mask of pure wordless fury at the brazen statement. High above the city rooftops, a single frustrated curse from Jang Il echoes through the air. Shit. Back at the Hao Sect branch, Gui Nangnang is outside, looking up at the sky with a thoughtful expression. She walks away from the building with determination, calling to her subordinate, Gongmu, who immediately replies off-screen, Yes, branch leader. Her expression is serious and determined as she gives her first order. Send a letter to the Sect. As the camera rises toward the cult building against the sky, her voice continues the instruction. Tell them that the second son of the Y clan from Guangdong who disappeared. Carrying a large travel bag, Yonho arrives and looks at the sign for the Great Hanam Institute. Gui Nangnang's voiceover concludes with a close-up of Yonho's determined face. Has returned as a martial arts master. A beautiful panoramic shot reveals the extensive and peaceful campus of the Songlin Great Hanam Institute. A man in scholar's robes sits alone on a balcony, drinking tea quietly as he contemplates the grounds. The man, introduced as the third great scholar Mun Yuwen, slowly sips his steaming cup and remarks with satisfaction. How pleasant. His daughter appears behind him and formally addresses him with a slight bow. Father. Identified as Mun Yunij, the daughter seems slightly worried as she informs him. There's a guest for you. Mun Yuwen looks back, puzzled. But I have nothing on my schedule today, and his daughter explains. They said they wanted to play a game of Go with you. At the mention of the game, Mun Yuwen's entire demeanor changes as he blushes and smiles with pure delight, asking, Go. Mun Yunij gestures toward the visitor she has brought, announcing, The guest is here, while the rough Yonho points to his own scarred eye. Looking at the serene lotus pond, Yonho politely says, I hope I'm not interrupting. Mun Yuwen gestures welcomingly towards a prepared Go board, replying, Of course not. It's a pleasure to have guests. Did I hear that you wanted to play Go with me? Now sitting across from the scholar, Yonho confirms with a simple statement. It's the only kind of game I know how to play. Mun Yuwen smiles kindly and invites him to begin. Very well, let's give it a try then. I'll play with the white stones. Please, you start. Yonho licks his lips with a confident smile, taking a stone from the bowl and declaring, I'll start. A close-up shows his hand, deliberately selecting a single black ghost stone from the bag. Mun Yuwen inwardly judges the rough appearance of his guest, thinking, I suppose I shouldn't expect much from him. It seems he's here to get a free meal, so I'll just help him out after one game. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts as Yonho's entire demeanor becomes sharp and intimidating, his gaze turning deadly serious. He slams the black stone onto the board with incredible force, the impact resonating with a sharp crack. Mun Yuwen's eyes widen in disbelief, a drop of sweat running down his temple as he looks at the board in complete shock. Regaining his composure, Mun Yuwen thinks, I guess he's not a beginner, before deciding to get serious. That's fine, let's see. The air fills with the sharp, rapid sounds of ghost stones being placed on the board. Mun Yuwen strokes his chin, a look of genuine surprise on his face as he thinks. He's quick with his moves. It's rare to see someone his age so experienced. The game continues at a dizzying pace, the relentless tapping of stones echoing as Mun Yuwen begins to feel the pressure. He starts to sweat under the tension, his focus entirely on the board as the rapid exchange of moves goes on without pause. His hand trembles slightly after placing a stone, his mind racing to keep up with the relentless assault of his opponent. Completely overwhelmed, his thoughts turn to pure disbelief. What the hell? It's not just that he's fast. Yonho leans on his hand with a predatory smile and asks, Aren't you going to play? While the scholar's mind screams in realization. He's a war demon. The Go board reveals the state of the game, with Yonho's black stones strategically overwhelming the white ones. Mun Yuwen looks up from the completed game, his face beaded with sweat and eyes wide with astonishment, uttering a single word. Incredible. Mun Yuwen internally analyzes his opponent's strategy, thinking, his playing style is like the furious waves of the ocean. Visualizing a shadowy beast with glowing red eyes, he continues his assessment. He's like a battle-crazed person, boldly attacking even when a fight isn't necessary. The monstrous form grows wings as the scholar thinks. If he even sees a small opening, the demon's massive jaw lunges forward to devour everything. He attacks like a hungry demon and bites. An intimidating vision of Yonho, superimposed on a bright red Go board, solidifies the scholar's horrified conclusion. He is a war demon. Yonho looks up from the board, his eyes glowing with a faint red light, a palpable pressure emanating from him. After the game ends, Mun Yuwen congratulates him. It was a good match. You have quite a unique playing style, leading Yonho to attribute it to his master's harassment. A flashback shows his master laughing loudly, setting the harsh terms of their games. Victory meant 3 days of rest, but defeat meant 10 times more training. Yonho sweats, tormented by the memory as he explains. Yes, a very strict old man. Looking at the peaceful scenery, he makes a polite request. My master told me to stay in Rulin for a while. If it's not too much trouble, I would love to stay a bit. Mun Yuwen smiles kindly and agrees to the request. Ah, you are following his teachings. Of course, I will help you. I will prepare a room for you. Please stay as long as you like. He gives instructions to his daughter to prepare everything, but Yonho nervously interrupts. But I don't have any money. The scholar laughs heartily. Ha ha ha. I wouldn't expect payment from a guest like you. In fact, I was going to ask you to stay even if you hadn't asked. Looking at the finished game on the table, Mun Yuwen makes a simple request. In exchange, please play Go with me or with a guest from time to time. Yonho points to himself confidently and accepts the terms. I can do that. As Yonho says goodbye to the scholar. Then, see you later. Mun Yuwen gestures for him to follow her, saying, Come with me. She takes him to a large, luxurious bathroom filled with steaming, clean water. Yonho sinks into the bathtub and leans back with a sigh of pure happiness. Ah, this is nice. Closing his eyes with satisfaction, he thinks to himself, I hated baths when I was younger. Maybe it's because this water is pleasant. I feel like my skin is also getting lighter. As the spectral image of his master appears in the steam, Yonho's happy thoughts turn resentful. I'm almost going to cry because this feels so good. It's all that damn old man's fault. Mun Yuwen walks cautiously toward the steaming bathroom, carrying a pile of fresh, folded clothes for the guest. She stops, her expression clouded with doubt as she thinks, I don't understand at all. Why did father accept someone like him as a guest? Just at that moment, Yonho's foot splashes as he begins to step out of the large wooden tub. Mun Yuwen is left speechless with surprise as his tall, muscular figure rises from the water right in front of her. She lets out a sharp scream, Kyahhhh, causing a startled Yonho to turn from the bath and ask, "What?" Blushing furiously, she tightly closes her eyes and holds out the clothes, stammering, I thought you were a ghost. Please, cover yourself." Yonho calmly takes the bundle of clothes she offers, murmuring, "Well." Mun Yunij spies on him, her face completely flushed as she stares intently, captivated by his appearance. The steam from the hot bath swirls around his well-defined torso, as water drips down his neck and chest. He looks at her with a confident, shining expression and asks with a slight smile, "Is that enough?" Mun Yunij enters the room and finds the guest, Yonho, standing wrapped only in a towel, causing both to ask, "Who are you?" A few days later, the scene shifts to a sunny afternoon at the Institute as Mun Yunij urgently shouts, "Father." She runs alongside her father as he studies a Go board and demands, "Please say something to that person," specifying that she means the new guy. A flashback shows Yonho sleeping deeply in his room while she complains in the present. He doesn't come out of his room at all. Her face is a mask of pure frustration as she exclaims, "He sleeps all day if he's not eating. That's what he's been doing all week." Mun Yuwin maintains a serene and wise smile as his daughter continues venting her frustrations. She gestures toward her father's back, reminding him of his own teachings about laziness before he calmly admits, "I forgot to ask his name." Mun Yuwin turns to his daughter with a calm expression and begins to explain his reasoning. "Yunji, I like Go. You can learn a lot about your opponent when you play." Placing a stone on the board precisely, he continues, "You can hide your facial expressions and be careful with your words, but you can't hide yourself when you play Go." As his hand moves over the board, demonstrating his point, he concludes, "An impatient person can't play patiently, and those who are the opposite can't learn to enjoy the battle." Mun Yuwin explains, "You can tell how someone has lived their life along with their personality when you play Go with them. Their playing style was rushed and rough. I've never seen a playing style like theirs." A memory of Yonho's scarred hand reinforces the scholar's conclusion. "He definitely isn't a lazy person. I suppose he has lived a very hard life." He points to the sunlit Go board, continuing his metaphor. "If the sun shines brightly, the shadows it casts will be just as dark. If he is being lazy, I am sure it only means that his life until now has been very difficult." With his eyes closed, he offers his final advice. "You shouldn't drive away a bird that has come under the roof to avoid the rain, so let him rest." Mun Yunij closes her eyes and exhales, seeming to accept her father's words as she says, "It's okay." Her eyes snap open with a mischievous glint as she thinks to herself, I knew it." She stands beside Yonho, who is sleeping deeply on the floor of his messy room, surrounded by empty dishes. Looking at his drooling, unconscious face, she thinks with conviction, "Father has been fooled. There's no way this slacker is like how Father described him. I'm going to get him kicked out of this place." With arms crossed, she looms over his sleeping figure and shouts, "Get up." Yonho's eyes open slowly, and he looks at her dazed, weakly asking, "Why?" Mun Yunij violently yanks the blanket off Yonho, who is still asleep on the floor, shouting, "Get up. The sun is already out." He sits up slowly, scratching the back of his neck and calmly responding, "Really? Then let me know when the sun sets." Standing beside him with her hands on her hips, she begins to scold him. "What the hell is wrong with you? Everyone studies here. Why do you do nothing but sleep for an entire week?" Yonho looks at her with a lazy, carefree expression, retorting, "Those people study because they want to study. I sleep because I want to sleep. What's the problem?" Yunij's face twists with anger as she launches into a tirade about his laziness, his consumption of food, and his failure to contribute to the household. Yonho begins to protest, "But your father said." But she immediately cuts him off, declaring, "I'm the one in charge of the money." She looks down with a determined expression, the flush of anger still visible on her cheeks as she resolves to put him to work. Resigned to his fate, Yonho sighs and asks with a bead of sweat on his cheek, "So, what should I do?" She leads him to an outdoor yard full of huge, stinking piles of dirty laundry and points, handing him his task. "Wash the clothes." With her hair now tied back, Yonho looks at the enormous piles in disbelief. "All this?" And after she confirms she'll cover his food expenses, he murmurs, "Anyone would think you put gold flakes on my rice." Mun Yunij watches him leave for work with a smile, shouting, "Good luck. Make sure it's clean. I'll have you rewash anything that's not, so do a thorough job." Clasping her hands joyfully, she thinks to herself, "You deserve it. There's no way you can finish all that today." Just 2 hours later, he returns to the washing area, his face beaded with sweat and frozen in an expression of utter disbelief. Surrounded by perfectly washed and brilliantly white clothes neatly hung out to dry, she stammers to herself, "How did he?" Looking at the incredibly bright clothes shining in the sun, she wonders in amazement. Were they always this white? Seeing Yonho already finished and relaxing on a nearby terrace, she thinks in pure bewilderment. How the heck did he do this? Clenching her fist, she grits her teeth with renewed determination. No, I can't let him slack off again. I'll catch him. She leads him to another area, where a large pile of uncut logs lies next to a chopping block with an axe. While Yonho asks, "All this?" she gives him a sweet smile. "I'll give you a week, you can do it, right?" All while thinking, I bet he'll run away after a day. He returns later to find Yonho casually relaxing on top of a huge stack of perfectly chopped firewood, leaving her completely speechless once again. Mun Yunij looks at the carefully stacked firewood in disbelief, thinking, what the hell? That should have taken 10 people 10 days. Later, she finds him passed out on the floor again, this time surrounded by piles of gleaming dishes. Then she discovers the entire garden has been perfectly tended, with Yonho once again sleeping nearby, leaving her wondering, how? Clenching her fists in pure frustration, her mind screams, how is he so capable? The scene shifts to a peaceful nighttime view of the Institute as a narrator concludes the chapter. Thus began Why Yonho's life at Rulin. Elsewhere, Jang Il's teacher tells him, but it was a mistake to take him in. He should never have let that guy into his home, leading Jang Il to ask, why? The elder explains with a sinister smile. Because that guy brings disaster wherever he goes. It may not be intentional, but wherever he goes, trouble follows. He continues his story under the full moon. It was the same with Rulin. A hall of scholars that had been so quiet and peaceful was swept by chaos once Wai Yonho appeared. Jang Il looks up at the sky, a drop of sweat running down his face as he asks, what happened? The old man gazes at the moon with a nostalgic smile, his hand outstretched as he begins to tell the story. It all started when the old man's story begins with a blur of stones on a board and a single word, go. In the past, a tired Yonho looks out the window after a match, sighing, ugh, how did I do? He looks at the Institute grounds, realizing the magnitude of the situation. I thought it would be occasional. Everyone must have received a letter. A massive crowd of scholars gathers, invitations in hand, while Yonho thinks irritably, bringing people here to play with me is cheating. A close-up of an invitation reveals a poetic message from the grand scholar. A stone that remains stuck rots. A set table awaits its owner. A flashback shows Mun Yuwen elegantly writing the invitations, ending each with the line, if the moment is right, please visit us for a game of Go. Back at the Institute, the narrator explains that as a result of the letters, a Go master appeared. Surrounded by a crowd of scholars, another challenger sweats and admits defeat, stammering, I've lost. Leaning on his hand with a confident smile, Yonho shouts to the spectators, next, solidifying his new reputation. With the force of a strike, Yonho hits a black stone on the board, making a sharp tack resonate. The scholar Mun Yuwen sweats as he watches the move, murmuring to himself with deep concentration, MMM. Confused by the position of the stone, the scholar thinks, what kind of move was that? It's basically suicide. He continues his internal deliberation, wondering, is it a mistake? But concludes, no way, maybe if it were any ordinary civilian. But my opponent is the undefeated Hanlam genius, the scholar thinks, visualizing Yonho's powerful dragon aura. Sweating from the pressure, the scholar places his stone and decides, yes, he must have some plan in mind. It has to be a trap. I must avoid it. Seeing Yonho tremble slightly, the scholar thinks with an air of confidence, is he trembling? I knew it. I'm sure he was plotting something. Good thing I avoided it. Yonho remains silent, his intense gaze fixed on the board while reflects his muteness. A previous opponent appears in the scholar's mind, shouting with maddened fury, why did you retreat there? Why? With an inner sigh, Yonho places another stone and thinks resignedly, I did that so I could lose. I'll keep playing Go forever if I don't lose. Despite Yonho's inner plea, fall for the trap, I'll lose in 10 moves, so take the bait. The scholar bowed and admitted defeat. Cuk, I've lost. With tears running down his face and a forced smile, Yonho clasped his hands and cursed inwardly. Damn it, letting out an us. He staggered away from the game table, completely crushed by his unwanted victory. As he walked, he thought bitterly, I kept making suicidal moves to lose, but instead, they only scared my opponents. Grabbing his head in panic, he screamed internally, at this rate, more people are going to come to play. Rubbing his aching back, he complained, ugh, my back, before declaring, I'd rather do the laundry. Yonho turned with an exasperated expression and snapped, I said I don't want to. Peeking curiously down a hallway, he murmured, ahem. A burly, jewel-adorned man named Nok Mokpung looked at him and asked, do you really not want to marry me? Crossing her arms with an angry glare, Mun Yunij firmly declared, "No, absolutely not." Nok Mokpung looked at her with disdain and warned in a grave voice, "You'll regret it." Clenching her teeth with determination, Mun Yunij firmly replied, "I won't." He continued with his threat, "You'd better think it over again. I've always gotten what I want, and this time I'm only offering, but next time it won't be an offer." She challenged him, "Are you sure it's okay for the great Hanam Institute to fall just because of you?" Before shouting, "Do whatever you want. The Institute won't fall that easily." With a condescending smile, he replied, "Of course, but I can make it happen. I'm sure you're aware of that too." Yunid's face twisted into a mask of pure silent rage, her teeth grinding in frustration. She shouted at his back, "Do you think everything will go in your favor?" To which he answered, "It's not impossible," and she declared, "No, I'll never marry you, so it's impossible." As she turned abruptly to leave, he said coldly, "Then goodbye." In a sudden movement, Nok Mokpung's huge hand closed tightly around Yunij's delicate wrist. Holding her with a smug smile while she struggled, Yunij screamed in pain and fear, "Kyagh, let me go." With a sinister grimace, Nok Mokpung hissed, "You better not make me angry." He leaned over the terrified Yunij, licking his lips and asking, "Do you think you can still act so boldly even if I try to take you here and now?" Mun Yunij froze, her eyes wide with fear and sweat beading on her face. A calm voice interrupted the tension. "That's not something you should say in someone else's house," causing Yunij to turn around in surprise. The camera focused on the cold, stern gaze of Wai Yonho, the owner of the voice. Yonho suddenly appeared with his arms crossed, his calm presence surprising everyone in the room. Ignoring the interruption, Mokpung raised his hand to strike the defenseless Yunij, who shrank back in fear. Seeing her unexpected savior, Yunij shouted at him in shock, Have you already finished washing the clothes and chopping the firewood?" Yonho's hand effortlessly stopped Mokpung's blow as he replied to her with a tired air, "I've been playing Go until now. What are you talking?" Then he turned to the tearful Yunij, took one of the red ribbons from her hair and said, "Let me borrow this," leaving her completely confused. Ha! The red ribbon he took from Yunij's hair fluttered gently in the air for a moment. With calm and deliberate movements, Yonho used the ribbon to tie his long hair into a ponytail. With his hair now tied back, his gaze turned icy as he walked with determination toward the confrontation. Nok Mokpung looked at him disdainfully and asked, "Don't you think it's impolite to eavesdrop on other people's conversations?" Passing by Yunij with his hands behind his head, Yonho answered indifferently, "Sorry, I really don't know my manners." Then he confronted Mokpung and retorted, "That said, I don't think you're the one to talk about manners. Do people who care about manners usually act like you?" A spark of recognition appeared in Mokpung's eyes as he said, "You must be the Hanlim genius." Yonho smiled smugly and replied, "Thanks for recognizing me, but I have no idea who you are." Visibly annoyed but still arrogant, Mokpung raised his jeweled hand and began to introduce himself. "I am." But Yonho interrupted him, boredly cleaning his ear and saying, "Oh, all right. I really don't care." Nok Mokpung's face twisted into a mask of pure fury, trembling in tense silence. Looking at Yonho, he growled, "The Hanlim genius. You should have kept playing Go instead of getting in my way." Yonho smiled arrogantly and replied, "What a shame. I'm very good at getting in people's way, just like now." Quivering with rage, Mokpung's face distorted as he hissed, "You, bastard." With a roar, Nok Mokpung lunged forward, intending to attack Yonho. Suddenly, a crowd of cheerful scholars surrounded Yonho, blocking Mokpung's path and requesting Go matches, to which Yonho casually replied, "Ah, sure." Frustrated by the interruption, Mokpung sharply turned around and clicked his tongue. "I'm leaving." He stopped and looked at them over his shoulder, warning, "But don't forget, if you don't come running into my arms within 3 days, I'll do things my way," he concluded as he walked away in long strides. Yonho watched his departure with a cold, calculating expression, a silent, reflecting his thoughts. Once Mokpung was gone, Yonho turned to Yunij and asked, "Who was that?" To which she could only sigh tiredly. "Ha," she explained with a gloomy image in her mind. "A man named Nok Mokpung." With a look of disdain, she continued, "He is the adopted son of the Imperial Palace assistant who holds a lot of power." With his arms crossed, Yonho insisted, "What was he telling you?" But she remained silent for a moment. Finally, she confessed with annoyance, "He wants me to marry him. I've told him no every time, but he's very annoying." Yonho pointed casually and said, "Isn't that okay? He's from a good family and he's determined," provoking Yunij to think angrily. "Do you want to die?" She glared at him and clarified, "He doesn't want to marry me because he likes me. He just wants to use me since my father has a very good network of contacts in Rulin. As an image worthy of her father appeared, she explained. People say he's a perfect candidate to be a politician, and the reason he lives this life isn't just because he has no interest in civil service. Yonho smiled smugly and guessed, "Heh, it must be because of Go, right?" To which an irritated eunuch shouted, "No." She revealed the grim truth. "It's because the imperial palace eunuchs distrust my father greatly." Yonho asked with genuine confusion, "The eunuchs? But your father is just the owner of this institute. Why would they distrust him?" Angrily, eunuch replied, "It's not just any institute. The Great Hanam Institute is different from the others." She explained proudly, "We are not affiliated with any other organization, so even though it was difficult, we've been able to form many deep connections with others." With an image of her father as a powerful leader, she continued, "The corrupt eunuchs are in power because the forces of Rulin haven't unified. However, if my father could control those forces." Yonho understood the implication and asked, "Would the eunuchs be in danger?" To which she responded with a simple and definitive, "Yes." Under a night sky, she revealed the reason. "That's why Nok Mokpung's father is desperate to prevent my father from taking a civil position. And recently, he has found a new way." She went on describing the plan. "A way to no longer fear the unification of Rulin, while at the same time gaining a close connection with a powerful figure within Rulin." The scene showed Mokpung kneeling as Yunid's voice concluded. "It is the marriage between Nok Mokpung and me," and he apologized. "I'm sorry, father." Mokpung continued his report to his father. "An individual called the Hanlim Genius appeared, so it might be difficult to continue with the plan." The chief eunuch Nok Gi mocked the excuse. "The Hanlim Genius, a good-for-nothing who only plays Go all day." Kneeling before his father, Mokpung reported, "He is not the problem. Rather, there are people from all over the nation coming to play Go against him." He continued nervously, "There are too many eyes watching. My actions are limited. It could be bad if I tried to do something amid all that." With his back to his son, Nok Gi said, "I see why you have doubts then," to which an embarrassed Mokpung replied, "I apologize." However, Nok Gi turned slightly and asked, "Yet, do you think this mission is only for my benefit?" Mokpung looked up, sweating profusely and speechless at his father's unexpected question. With an authoritative gesture, Nok Gi revealed, "Taking the imperial palace is a mission entrusted by the one and only true ruler." As he walked toward his son with an ominous aura, he declared, "Failing this mission is not an option, not for you nor for me." He leaned over his son and asked, "I'm more afraid of disappointing him than of death. Do you understand what I mean?" And a terrified Mokpung nodded. "Yes, I'm very aware." Stroking his son's hair with an eerie gentleness, Nok Gi whispered, "Sometimes violence is necessary." With sweat running down his face, Mokpung asked in a trembling voice, understanding the terrible order, "Do you mean?" A sinister voice, shrouded in a purple aura, gave a chilling command. "Use the crowd to your advantage. Kill them all, including the Hanlim Genius," the voice concluded, while elsewhere, a sleepy Yonho was being awakened from a nap on the Go board. Meanwhile, in a quiet and opulent residence, an important conversation was taking place. Inspector Yi Hwanjia, the emperor's younger brother, asked his Go opponent, "So, you still have no intention of accepting a government position?" Sitting opposite him, the scholar Mun Yuwen simply replied, "I apologize." Yi Hwanjia pressed him, "Don't you know you have to maintain balance in the center to avoid Nok Gi?" But the scholar remained silent. With a deep sigh of frustration, the inspector officer said, "Hey, Yuwen." He continued his warning gravely, "Lately, your moves have not been ordinary." He leaned in closer and revealed, "Even among the military and the literati, some unsettling movements are being seen. Corruption is cutting directly through Nok Gi." A dark and malevolent image of the eunuch leader, wrapped in a red aura, represented the deep rot that had spread through power. The scholar Mun Yuwen looked at his friend and began to ask, But is that the reason you want to ask why a eunuch who cannot forget humiliation is trying to start a rebellion?" To which Yi Hwanjia confirmed, "Yes, that is so." Yi Hwanjia leaned forward and proposed a new theory. "So, what do you think of this? What if the master he serves is someone else?" As a bloody vision of the eunuch's struggle for power filled the scene, he explained, "The power struggles of the eunuchs are more terrifying than we can imagine." He continued, "But Nok Gi, who had no foundation, defeated them all and rose to his current position. But isn't that really strange? Those who were hostile to him lost their lives in accidents, and even those who weren't died of sudden illnesses. It happened too frequently." He narrated about Nok Gi's sinister rise. Under a red-tinged moon, he concluded his thought, "It's as if someone had already prepared the position for him to rise in advance." Still skeptical, Mun Yuwen looked down and suggested, "It could also be a coincidence." Yi Huanjia admitted, "I thought the same until recently, but while watching his recent movements, I wondered if there might be someone behind him." With a serious look, he pleaded with his friend, "That's why I need you. We must unite the scholars as one. Only then can we resist, do you understand?" Mun Yuwen avoided the subject with a vague response. "I'll think about it a bit more," while Yi Huanjia cleared his throat. Ahem. Changing the subject, Yi Huanjia asked with interest, "Very well, let's do it. What kind of person is the talent you mentioned?" Mun Yuwen's face lit up with admiration and exclaimed, "He's an extraordinary person. Could I say he seems to be hiding?" Intrigued, Yi Huanjia asked, "Since you're so pleased with him, I'm curious too. When can I meet him?" To which Mun Yuwen replied, "It so happens that Yunji has probably gone to bring him now." Just at that moment, Yunji's voice sounded, "Father," and Mun Yuwen indicated, "Oh, he's here, come in." A shiny black boot stepped into a puddle on the floor, breaking the silence of the room. A completely soaked Yonho appeared at the door, his clothes clinging to his torso, and asked irritably, "Did you call me, sir?" Both Yi Huanjia and Mun Yuwen stared at the young man, completely bewildered by his unexpected appearance. When asked if he had slept well, Yonho responded sarcastically while drying his face, "Yes, I slept very well. I could have slept a little better if someone hadn't thrown cold water on my face. What a pity." Mun Yuwen laughed and said, "Ha ha, so that's what happened. Still, I'm relieved you slept deeply. The reason I called you is that there's someone I'd like to introduce you to." With a sly smile, Yi Huanjia introduced himself evasively. "Just an old man passing by, let's say that." Yonho replied, "That sounds like an explanation with quite a story behind it." And when asked what business he had, the old man insisted, "I just wanted to play a game of Go, of course." At the request to play, Yonho answered firmly, "But I can't." The old man asked in surprise, "You can't?" And Yonho explained, pointing to the other scholars, "Yes, aren't they already exchanging moves with those who come here?" Opening his robe to reveal his chest full of scars, he clarified, "It's not that I refuse to play Go. The point is to respect the order. There are people who arrived first, so please wait your turn, sir." Yi Huanjia laughed arrogantly and said, "Ha ha. If that's the problem, I'll take care of it. I'll ask the others for their understanding." Yonho's gaze hardened and he retorted, "You can't call that a solution, can you? That's called coercion." The young man left Yi Huanjia completely stunned and sweating from the boldness of his reprimand. Yonho continued his lesson. "From what I see, your status seems quite high, so if you speak, others will have no choice but to accept it. But they won't be convinced." With a serious look, he concluded, "There are things called principles and promises, you know." Yi Huanjia thought with frustration, observing the young man. "Isn't this person more determined than I thought? This is problematic." Yonho stood firm and said, "How do you mean it doesn't work? I'm telling you, you just have to wait," leaving the elder coughing in response. At that moment, Yunij stepped forward and said to her father, "Father, I think I can solve it." Yi Huanjia looked at her surprised and asked, "You?" And she confirmed with a simple yes. Walking with determination, she thought irritably about Yonho. "Principles, promises, he's just wasting time, isn't he? What is that man?" She approached Yonho and whispered an offer. "The Go game you have left to play today in just one match," provoking a surprised "huh" from him. "I'll cancel everything for you," she concluded, causing a sweaty and tempted Yonho to exclaim, "What?" He hesitated, "Really? It's tempting, but for me, there are also things called principles and duties." But she insisted that the offer was only valid until tomorrow. With a stern look, Yunij gave him an ultimatum. "If you want a rest even today, don't play any tricks. There will be no more negotiations. Make your decision now." Sitting back in front of the board, Yonho yawned and announced, "The game, I'll start tilde," while a satisfied Yunij watched from behind. Yi Huanjia looked at Yonho with disappointment, while Mun Yuwen smiled awkwardly beside him. Sighing to himself, the old man thought disdainfully, "He's the worst. Isn't this guy all talk and no action?" As the game began, he thought, "If he was wrong, I would just get up and leave, but once we start, we must see it through to the end." With a determined look, he placed a stone on the board, thinking, "Let's see what kind of person you are." A close-up of the Go board showed the stones shining, indicating the game had taken an intense turn. Night fell, but Yi Huanjia remained seated alone, lost in thought as he contemplated the Go board illuminated by the moon. Mun Yuwen approached him in the darkness and asked, "Weren't you pleased with the Go game against him?" To which the old man could only murmur, "Hm." With his hand on his chest, Yi Huanjia looked up at the starry sky, speechless from the deep impression the game had left on him. In his mind, the Go board burned with a red and violent aura, reflecting the intensity of the battle that had taken place upon it. Finally, he voiced his amazement in his thoughts. What a fierce style of play! Isn't this a style that wouldn't even appear on a battlefield? Staring intently at Yonho, Yi Chuanjia wondered inwardly, what kind of life have you lived on Earth? But he concluded with disappointment. But it doesn't match. The brutal side revealed on the board, nor the lazy side he usually shows, is not the image of the talent I want. Later, while walking with Mun Yuwen, he declared, it was a waste of time. I can't understand why you value that person so much, to which his friend responded, because I have seen him. Yi Chuanjia turned, suddenly intrigued, and asked, you have seen him? Mun Yuwen recalled the game. While playing a great match with him, there was a moment when I made a divine move. Reflecting on that move, he admitted, even for me, I think it was a really good play. Just when I thought the great game was over, I looked away from the board and glanced across. In that place, the scholar narrated, a person who has fallen to the extreme, who with great difficulty occasionally reveals himself. He continued, as the image of a serene Yonho filled his memory. With a close-up of Yonho's eye, which seemed to contain the universe, Mun Yuwen concluded, a face of indifference. The two elders remained silent under the moonlight, reflecting on Mun Yuwen's profound revelation. Still doubting his friend's revelation, Yi Chuanjia asked, perhaps you saw it wrong. Mun Yuwen returned his gaze with unshakable calm. His confident expression was all the answer needed. Turning around, the elder official sighed and said, heavens. Then he declared, anyway, I have no intention of using that person, to which Mun Yuwen simply replied, is that so? Yi Chuanjia insisted, it was a waste of time. But his friend kindly responded, no, since I was able to see you, I can't call it a waste of time. Before the official announced his departure for the next morning, he explained his urgency. Didn't I tell you, the atmosphere of the imperial family is not good at all? And Mun Yuwen nodded understandingly. I see. Looking at the full moon, Yi Chuanjia sighed with regret. What a shame. The bright full moon hung in the night sky, offering a moment of serene beauty amid the growing tension. Meanwhile, a swift figure jumped across the rooftops, thinking, a perfect night with nothing to regret. In the darkness, a masked assassin informed Nok Mokpung, everything is ready, and he responded with a simple, sinister, good. Under the dark night, Nok Mokpung stood with his masked assassins, ready to attack the Institute. With a cruel smile, he gave the order to his men, subdue them all quickly. One of the assassins shouted, attack, and rushed forward in a blur of speed. As the death squad leapt over the walls, they were met by the sight of a solitary guard loudly yawning. The guard's face transformed into a mask of pure terror and confusion upon realizing the dozen assassins descending upon him. A scream echoed through the night as a spray of blood violently splattered a nearby door. Amid the chaos, an imposing figure bearing Nok Mokpung's distinctive gold chains made a dramatic entrance. It was Nok Mokpung himself, standing calmly among the slaughtered bodies of all his assassins. In a bloody instant, a single mysterious figure wielding a blue energy sword had annihilated the entire assassin squad. As the last assassin fell, the lone warrior stood tall over the kneeling, defeated guards of the Institute. With a smug smile, Nok Mokpung mocked the defeated guards. You should have listened to me earlier. Looking down at the carnage he had caused, he roared, arrest them all. With a gleam of mad delight, he declared, tonight, not a single rat will get out of Hanam Academy, he concluded, while Yonho, the Institute's supposed genius, slept deeply, oblivious to the chaos. The next day, with the Institute now under Mokpung's control, a determined Mun Yunich thought, today, I'll teach that bitch a lesson. Mokpung thought elsewhere, his face contorted with rage over the humiliation of the previous night. The Institute's scholars, including their leader Mun Yuwen and his daughter Yunij, were tied up and forced to kneel at sword point. Mun Yuwen, bound but defiant, shouted at his captors, what is the meaning of this? Nok Mokpung stood before them and offered his false justification. We received information that there has been suspicious activity at the Institute. We've heard that high-ranking people have been visiting recently. One of the captive scholars responded in disbelief. How is that suspicious at all? With a smug smile, Nok Mokpung posed his accusation. What reason could there be for people with political and martial power to gather? To the horror of the scholars, he declared, there is only one possibility, a revolution. Mun Yuwen protested desperately, what? A revolution? We're only here to play Go. Mokpung loomed over them with disdain and mocked. You want me to believe that so many people gathered just to play Go? When a scholar tried to use the genius's reputation as an alibi, Mokpung replied, rumors? Yes, I've heard them, but rumors can be easily fabricated. Looking around at the bound scholars, his thoughts turned to one absent person. When one of his men asked where the genius was, Mokpung inquired, "Who are you looking for?" "The genius you're talking about," the guard replied. After a brief visual sweep, Mokpung stated confidently, "No one else remains in the building." He pondered, did he escape? And then concluded, he must have left earlier. It would be impossible to flee after we arrived. What a lucky bastard. Addressing the captured scholars, he gave them false reassurance. "Anyway, all right, everyone will be freed if they are innocent. We will apologize if we find no proof." One of Mokpung's guards knelt before him, presenting a book and declaring triumphantly, "I found it." Mokpung explained as the signatures book was shown. "It's an agreement from the people planning the revolution." Mun Yuwen and the other captive scholars shouted indignantly, "What? We never did such a thing." Holding the book high for everyone to see, Mokpung retorted, "The proof is right in front of you." Mun Yuwen's face twisted with rage as he realized the trap. "He came here to frame us from the start. We've been deceived." Panic seized the other scholars, who shouted, "It wasn't us. I'm innocent. I didn't come here to participate in such activities." Suddenly, a calm voice was heard among the captives as an imposing figure, also bound, commented, "Nok Mokpung. What an interesting incident." Nok Mokpung froze, sweating coldly as he recognized the unexpected prisoner. "You are." The chief royal inspector Yi Hwanjia, the emperor's own brother, was tied up among them, while a surprised Mun Yuwen shouted his name. Despite his bindings, Yi Hwanjia looked at Mokpung with imposing fury and roared, "Call me the chief royal inspector." A murmur of astonishment ran through the captive scholars as they recognized the bound figure. "The chief royal inspector Li Wanjia." Two scholars whispered in relief, "We are saved. He has seen everything, so he will say that we are all innocent." Nok Mokpung clasped his hands in a feigned show of respect and said, "I wouldn't have done this if I had known you were here." Yi Hwanjia looked at him calmly and answered, "I am not one to hold grudges, so set us free." With a cunning smile, Mokpung replied, "Before that, I would like to ask you a question," to which the inspector asked, "What?" Mokpung leaned in and asked him directly, his voice full of venom, "Why did you plan this revolution?" Leaving Yi Hwanjia stunned and furious. With a manic smile, Mokpung continued, "Did you really think I wouldn't know you were here?" And an incredulous Yi Hwanjia stammered, What are you saying?" Without mercy, Mokpung's guards forced the royal inspector to kneel, securing his bindings. Mokpung loomed over him and revealed his plan. "There is always a central figure in a revolution. I don't assume it was just a scholar. It would make more sense if it were you, a member of the emperor's family." Completely enraged by the blatant trap, Yi Hwanjia roared, "Your arrogance knows no bounds. How dare you accuse me? I won't let you get away with this." Mokpung mocked the royal inspector. "You seem not to understand something. You won't be able to report this to His Majesty because you will never see him again." Then he addressed all the captives and declared, "The punishment for revolution is immediate execution. Everyone will die here. Since we have the signatures, it's obvious you planned a revolution." "Ha ha ha." Yi Hwanjia shouted furiously, "Bastard, the heavens will not forgive you for this." To which Mokpung replied disdainfully, "Yes, of course, keep begging." With a cruel smile, Mokpung added, "And there is someone who has to die first." His gaze fell on the young woman tied up as he pronounced her name, Mun Yunji. He approached her and said, "I warned you I would do things my way. Thanks to you rejecting me, everyone is going to die." Gently lifting the terrified young girl's chin, he whispered, "Are you willing to change your mind now?" With his face inches from hers, he smiled confidently, certain of her submission. But with an explosion of fury and defiance, Yunij shouted in his face, "I'd rather die here than marry someone like you." Faced with her defiance, a grotesque smile spread across Mokpung's face as he licked his lips in anticipation. Pinching Yunij's cheek, Mokpung assured her with playful cruelty, "Don't worry, I won't kill you." He continued his threat, "I'll make you think death would be the best outcome. I'll inflict pain 100 times worse than you can imagine." With fierce determination, Yunij bit her tongue and spat out, "I'd rather die than be humiliated by you." To which Mokpung calmly replied, "Is that so?" A masked guard placed a sword at her father's neck while Mokpung warned her, "If you kill yourself, your father will be the one to suffer the torment." He then addressed all the captive scholars. "If your father also commits suicide, then the rest of the people here will suffer the torment." With an ominous pause, he added, "Don't think it will end there." Standing before the family, he revealed his final card. "All relatives related to those planning a revolution will be killed. If you want to kill yourself, go ahead." Yunij's face twisted in anguish as she realized she had no escape, while Mokpung's mocking laughter echoed. "The others will pay for the sins instead." Ha ha ha. Grabbing her hair with a pair of scissors, he sneered, Then do it. Kill yourself. I wouldn't mind having more people to entertain me anyway. Kekekek. Seeing his daughter being tortured, a helpless Mun Yuan could only scream her name in desperation. Eunji. Leaning over a writhing eunuch in pain, Mokpung lasciviously smiled and asked, "So, shall we start?" Held tightly by Mokpung, she screamed with her last strength, "Please, someone, help." With tears in her eyes and teeth clenched, Eunuch's hope began to fade into despair. Suddenly, her head lifted slightly, a single tear rolling down her cheek as if she had sensed something. Her expression shifted from despair to pure confusion as she softly whispered, "Ha." Outside the hall, Yonho was frantically running across the yard, searching for the source of the commotion. With a powerful leap, he jumped onto the building's roof to get a better view. He landed on the roof and moved stealthily, looking for the location of the captive scholars. Bursting into the room, Yonho stopped short at the scene, and an enraged Mokpung shouted his name. Wiyonho. A close-up revealed Yonho's face, drenched in sweat and panting, completely exhausted from his desperate run back. Perched on the rooftop, Yonho scratched his head and laughed awkwardly, as if he didn't grasp the seriousness of the situation. The head of an angry eunuch appeared over the edge of the rooftop, shouting, "What the hell are you doing?" With a panicked expression, Yonho yelled back at her, "Can't you see? I'm getting out of here." As Mokpung shouted, "Are you kidding me?" Yonho defended himself. What's wrong with saying I'm leaving when I am? Should I say I'm sorry instead?" Desperate eunuch shouted at him, "You should be helping us." Yonho complained, "Helping them? It's already hard enough just to stay alive." But she insisted, "You learned martial arts, you can help." He waved a hand dismissively and said, "You're overestimating my skill level. The best option in this kind of situation is to act like you saw nothing." Sitting on the rooftop, he cheerfully waved goodbye. "I didn't see anything at all. Keep doing what you're doing, Tilda." The faces of Eunuch, her father, and Yi Hwanjia twisted into expressions of utter disbelief and disgust as they thought in unison, "What a piece of shit." Mokpung's face flushed red with pure rage as he growled at the fleeing coward. "Stop." Mokpung threatened Yonho from the courtyard. "You're already involved in the revolution. The whole world will hunt you down." But Yonho calmly replied, "Well, you can't be sure of that." He kept yelling, "Fool, the world may be big, but there are eyes everywhere. It won't be hard to find you." Yonho waved him off with a hand gesture, saying, Yeah, then find me later." With his face twisted in fury, Mokpung gave a simple and brutal order to his men. "Catch him." One of the masked guards lunged instantly, shouting, "Yes, sir." The assassin leapt onto the rooftop, launching a deadly dagger attack directly at a crouching Yonho. Below, a terrified eunuch shut her eyes and screamed with all her might, "Run." Suddenly, Yonho's carefree expression vanished, replaced by a cold, serious gaze. A small, confident smile appeared on his lips as he let out a brief chuckle. "Ha." As the assassin lunged at him, Yonho grumbled in his thoughts, "You were telling me to help a moment ago, and now you want me to run. What am I supposed to do?" Yonho moved with blinding speed, leaving the assassin attacking nothing but a residual image. With a shout of "Hube," he struck the rooftop with his fist, unleashing a massive shockwave of blue energy that shattered the tiles. She stood up, brushed the hair away from her face, and sighed with slight annoyance. Heavens! Below, Eunuch's eyes widened, completely astonished by her incredible demonstration of power. Standing on the rooftop, silhouetted against the full moon, Yonho looked at her and remarked, "You are a very strange woman." Eunuch remained in stunned silence, unable to process the sudden transformation of the lazy man into a master. The other captive scholars shared her amazement, their faces frozen in an expression of sheer disbelief. Mokpung's arrogance faded, replaced by fear as he stammered, What?" Regaining some composure, he sneered, "So you did have some skill after all." Turning his back on them, Yonho rubbed his face and chuckled, "Hee, thanks for the compliment." As a vein throbbed at Mokpung's temple, he snapped, "That was no compliment," but Yonho laughed and said, I was just saying it." Fed up, Mokpung called his elite assassin, Hukil, who appeared instantly, responding, "Yes." Mokpung muttered quietly to himself, "How much longer must I endure this ridiculous humiliation?" Sensing his master's anger, Hukil promised, "I apologize. I will take care of him immediately." However, Mokpung gave a surprising order regarding Yonho. "Don't kill him," leaving his assassin confused. "What?" Clenching his fist with a sadistic smile, Mokpung clarified, "I will tear him apart with my own hands." And Hukil replied, "Understood." With incredible speed, Hukil jumped off the rooftop and launched into pursuit of Yonho across the yard. With a drop of sweat on his forehead, Yonho raised a hand and hurriedly said, "Wait a second." The masked assassin stopped with the dagger in hand and asked coldly, "What is it?" Yonho pointed toward his room and said, I need to use my sword. Can you stay here a moment? I think my sword is in the room, making Hukil think, crazy bastard. Yonho continued mocking Hukil. I mean, you already look pretty old, and yet you have a problem when a younger guy says he's just gonna grab a sword. Completely exasperated, Hukil shouted at him, Shut UP. Ignoring him, Yonho sighed dramatically. 5 years ago, it wasn't like this. How the world has gotten so tough in the meantime. Losing patience, Hukil took a fighting stance and shouted, What are you doing? To which Yonho, now holding a broom, replied, What do you think? Brandishing the broom like a weapon, Yonho declared, Since you won't let me grab my sword, I'll use this instead. The assassin's face twisted with rage as he hissed, Are you mocking me? Yonho put on an innocent expression and said, Why are you mad at me? Then just let me go get my sword. Wrapped in an aura of battle, Hukil declared, I will not kill you, but I will make you feel a pain so intense that you will wish for death instead. He continued his ominous promise with a cold stare. Even if later you cry and beg. Interrupting him with a huge yawn, Yonho stretched and said, Okay, can we start now? I just woke up and I'm still sleepy. Boiling with pure rage, the masked assassin Hukil prepared to unleash his fury on the insolent youth. With his sword shining with deadly energy, he leapt into the air to deliver his final blow on Yonho, shouting, I this body. As his sword descended, the assassin's face twisted into a grimace of pure disbelief when he found his attack effortlessly stopped. With unshakable calm, Yonho had blocked the assassin's gleaming blade with the handle of his humble broom. In the very next instant, Hukil's face was smashed against the stone tiles of the courtyard with devastating force. With a single, casual sweep of his broom, Yonho sent the elite assassin flying as if he weighed nothing. Lying in a shattered heap, his mask broken, the assassin could barely stammer, What is this? Before losing consciousness. Yonho stood calmly over his unconscious opponent's body, holding his broom as the assassin's weapon clattered to the ground. Nok Mokpung watched from a distance, his face beaded with sweat and his mind unable to comprehend the scene unfolding before him. The captive scholars, including Mun Yuwen and Yi Hwangjia, shared his amazement, their mouths open in stunned silence. Clutching the handle of his broom, Yonho smiled and said, Oh, as expected, trash is best clean. With a confident smile, he finished his sentence. With a broom, the assassin's face twisted into a mask of pure rage and disbelief as he let out a strangled cry. Herk. The assassin Hukil dropped to the ground, clutching his head in pain and confusion after the first blow. What is this? Yonho loomed over him, offering a condescending piece of advice. Be glad it ended like this because it was me. You really shouldn't rush so recklessly. While the assassin stammered, Why you? Enraged, Hukil lunged at him, shouting, Bastard. Yonho effortlessly deflected the assassin's furious attacks with his broom, continuing his lecture. I was kindly explaining it to you and, caught in a whirlwind of broom strikes, Hukil panicked, thinking, Too fast, way too fast. With a quick sweeping motion, Yonho knocked his feet out from under him and sent him crashing to the ground. Sitting defeated on the ground, Hukil reluctantly admitted to himself, I don't want to admit it, but I have to. Incredible, but that guy isn't just a loudmouth. The assassin raised his poison-coated dagger, murmuring coldly, In a real fight, the strongest doesn't always win. Today I'll make you understand that. Yonho, leaning on his broom, looked at him mockingly and exclaimed, Poison? That's dirty, don't you think? With a crooked smile, the assassin gripped the weapon and replied, Hate me all you want. The young man, calm, replied in a low voice, But that won't work on me. The assassin frowned, asking, You say you're immune to all poisons? And Yonho answered, Of course they affect me. I haven't boiled ginseng roots or anything like that. Straightening his body, Yonho calmly clarified, It's not that I'm immune. It's more like. In an instant, his eyes shone and his figure appeared before the assassin like a lightning bolt. The masked man's eyes widened, paralyzed by sudden terror. The broom descended like a storm, sending the assassin flying amid a blackout. With a serious face, Yonho raised his improvised weapon again, ready to finish the fight. The assassin, his face distorted by fear, thought desperately, I have to block it. Yonho smiled coldly and mocked. Don't tell me you actually thought something like, I have to block it. In a flash, the young man advanced with crushing speed, raising his broom like a saber. A rain of blows descended upon the masked man, cutting through his defense and mercilessly shredding his body. The assassin spat blood in torrents, eyes rolling back from unbearable pain. The scholars around shouted in terror, breaking into a cold sweat as they witnessed the brutal beating. Yonho stood over the fallen enemy, broom ready to deliver the final blow. The defeated assassin's body lay sprawled on the ground, surrounded by incredulous stares. The young man aloud recalled his master's teachings. If the enemy seems to be preparing something grand, don't wait. Just take them down. Nok Mokpung, trembling with rage and sweat, couldn't believe it. Impossible to defeat Hukil so easily. He was the head of the dark force my father built over decades. Yonho, calmly holding his broom, warned, "If you step back here, we'll both come out better." Nok Mokpung showed his heavy-ringed hands, hinting at a hidden power. With an enigmatic smile, the burly man applauded slowly, provoking Yonho's doubt. Mokpung's face lit up as he exclaimed, "Excellent, to display such martial skill at your age. Truly excellent." Yonho scratched his head and laughed simply. "Well, I guess so." A female voice scolded him furiously. "Why are you so happy about that?" But he replied, "She's praising me, isn't she?" Mokpung's eyes gleamed with malice as he murmured, "This brat." Looking at the bodies on the ground, he declared, "That Hukil couldn't defeat you is unfortunate for me. But seen another way." The man smiled greedily and said, "Just knowing a martial artist like you already compensates for that. What do you say?" In a somber tone, he made his proposal. "Would you work for me?" While Yonho silently watched him with a female voice shouted suspiciously, "What are you scheming?" Nok Mokpung raised his arms wrapped in fire and declared, "Come to me, I will give you things you can't even imagine." Extending his hand, he promised in a deep voice, "Power to hold the world in your hand and immense wealth." Yonho, serious, murmured, "Anyone with sense and honor." The girl, hopeful, added, "Would never fall for such sweet words, right?" The young man smiled slyly and replied, "But I would, so let's talk numbers." Yunji shouted angrily, torn by the tension, "Why Yonho die?" An old man burst out in anger, thundering, "What the hell are you doing? Are power and wealth that important?" Nok Mokpung responded calmly, "They are," and Yonho added without hesitation, "Of course they are." The young woman lowered her gaze and confessed tremblingly, "They definitely are. Aye, it's important, very important." The old man shouted desperately, "But if he gives you power, how much could it be? If it's wealth, then how much?" Begging, "I'll give it to you, I'll give it to you." Nok Mokpung despised him. "What do you think that man could do for you? He may be the emperor's brother, but he has renounced everything." The giant added in a deep voice, "My father is different. He can grant you wealth and power that anyone would envy." Yonho observed the situation and commented amused, It seems he's a bit ahead." Another official shouted indignantly, "How can helping a traitor in rebellion be the same as exposing a true rebellion? Didn't your master teach you proper conduct?" "Yes, what did your master say?" added another, sweating. "You mention him so often you must treat his words as law." Anxiously, another man insisted, "Surely your master didn't teach you anything bad. It must be something useful for us." Yonho tilted his head and replied, "My master," in moments like this. Then he laughed and completed, "He said I should stay with the side that pays." The image of his master echoed in his memory. "Morality and virtue only give you an empty name. They don't feed you. Don't live righteously. The right path is to take everything you can whenever you can." A man let out a nervous laugh and murmured, "What kind of master says that?" Nok Mokpung opened his arms and proclaimed, "What use are morality or virtue? My father values those who help him." Yonho raised an eyebrow and asked incredulously, "Work? Do I have to work?" A young woman quickly interjected, "You won't have to do anything. Top-quality meals and guaranteed rest for life." The burly man corrected gently, "If you don't want to work, you don't have to. You'll still receive the rewards." The boy opened his eyes in surprise and said, "Really? You're truly generous, a real man." They both laughed together while the prisoners murmured disdainfully in silence, "Nonsense." Yonho smiled and asked, "So what do I need to do?" A grotesque grimace appeared on the villain's face, his teeth gleaming under the moonlight. Finally, he ordered cruelly, "First, kill everyone in front of you," to which Yonho responded in shock. "What?" Yonho pointed surprised and asked, "Is that what he says?" Then he added ironically, "Well, why did you plot betrayal then?" provoking desperate cries of innocence. Smiling lightly, he murmured, "Still, killing them seems wrong. I've never killed anyone, you know." Mokpung extended his hand coldly and ordered, "Then step aside, I'll do it. Bring me my sword." Brandishing the weapon, he declared solemnly, "I may not want to dirty my hands, but when fulfilling the sacred law of the nation, there can be no doubt." A man shouted furiously, "Stop now, you also learned loyalty and righteousness. How can you commit such a betrayal?" The villain raised his sword to the sky and roared, "What I do now?" In a solemn voice he finished, "Is loyalty." "Father," Yunji shouted desperately, tears in her eyes. The man closed his eyelids and murmured painfully, "Forgive me, Yunji." The burly man looked at him with contempt and said, "Don't you think it's enough already? With a leap, Yonho regained his composure and blocked the sword attack with his own. The burly man was surprised by the young man's unexpected strength and thought, "What kind of strength does this brat have?" In response to the man's question, "Have you forgotten everything we just talked about?" Yonho stopped the blade with his finger and replied, "Of course not, but I'll only play along up to this point." Yonho smiled arrogantly and asked as he stretched, "Do you know what's essential to living a lazy life?" With a serious look, he concluded, "Never create problems that bother you." A painful memory came to mind, that of a broken inkstone. "Once I broke an inkstone my father cherished, and at that very moment he wasn't home." He remembered his younger self, trembling with fear. "He didn't come back for 3 days, and those 3 days of waiting were torture for me." He recalled the brutal punishment and the strange relief he felt afterward. "When he finally got home, he beat me almost to death. But after that, I was able to rest peacefully." A third voice addressed the prisoners coldly. "You could very well have died then." The man in chains mocked. "Hey, Hanlam Go champion, why are you spouting nonsense all of a sudden?" With his eyes closed, Yonho recalled a lesson. Didn't the master also say this? Never forget a grudge. His master's voice echoed in his mind. But even more, never forget kindness. He remembered the faces of those to whom he owed gratitude and the continuation of the lesson. A man who does not repay what he has received. Before the debt multiplies, pay it back. With a determined smile, Yonho declared, "And as I see it, now is the time to return that kindness." The prisoners looked at him, completely stunned by his statement. The man in chains smiled disdainfully, understanding his intentions. "I see. So behind your grand words, you want to stop me." The big man beside him burst into a hysterical and mocking laugh. The leader stared at him with a superior expression. With his eyes shining threateningly, he asked, "Do you think I tried to bribe you because I feared you?" Yonho replied with a mocking smile, "Actually, no, it didn't seem that way." Nok Mukpung raised his hand, and a golden energy began to emanate from it. The energy took the shape of countless hands as he said, "Well, you see it clearly? Then let me show you, if I so desire." Launching a powerful attack, he completed the phrase, "It would be nothing for me to kill you." With a smile of superiority, he declared, "Consider it an honor to die by my hand." The elderly Nok Mokpung watched in shock, thinking, so Nok Mukpung also trained in martial arts. A devastating wave of energy shaped like dragons and hands surged towards Yonho. The blast's impact violently threw Yonho through the air. Mukpung laughed heartily as his opponent flew away. "Let me give you some advice. In your next life, drop that laziness and live diligently." Enduring the immense pressure of the attack, Yonho clenched his teeth with determination. The other prisoners watched terrified, unable to do anything. Amid the whirlwind of energy, Yonho felt a sense of familiarity. Strange. I've seen this somewhere before. Mukpung smiled arrogantly, confident in his victory. HMPH, of course. I used my ultimate technique from the start. His confidence grew as he saw no reaction, and yet he couldn't even respond. However, within the attack, Yonho moved at astonishing speed, dodging the energy with multiple images of himself. Mukpung's jaw dropped upon witnessing the impossible. What? Nearby, the big man lay defeated on the ground, weakly asking, "Is it over already?" A cold sweat ran down Mukpung's back as he slowly turned in terror. Seeing Yonho unharmed behind him, Mukpung stammered, "Ah, no, how?" To which Yonho calmly replied, "You saw everything, so why are you asking?" Yonho took a kicking stance and said coldly, "Whatever then." Mukpung's panicked scream, "Wait," was drowned out by the impact of the kick. The force of the blow sent him flying across the yard, smashing the ground as he went. Yonho had smiled confidently during the attack, promising, "I'll only hit you once." The prisoners watched with open mouths, completely stunned by the sudden display of power. Amid the dust and rubble, Yonho landed with impeccable calm and grace. Even the old Nok Mokpung couldn't believe what he saw and asked fearfully, Is he dead?" Yonho responded indifferently, "No, I just hit him lightly and his body is thick with fat." Sure enough, Mukpung got up from the rubble as Yonho finished his thought. "He's okay, I think." Yonho prepared to attack again, asking, "So, shall we continue where we left off?" But was interrupted by Mukpung's desperate shout. "Wait." With his face drenched in cold sweat, Mukpung tried to negotiate. "Why don't we all pretend this never happened?" As Yonho and the freed prisoners walked away, a heavy silence filled the night. Suddenly, Nok Mokpung stopped and angrily pointed at the defeated Mukpung. "That is unacceptable. Stop him immediately." He turned to Yonho and begged him, "Please, Your Highness, have you ever seen the Inspector General let a traitor go free?" Mukpung explained gravely, "If I don't return, my father will think the plan has failed." Under the full moon, he continued his warning, "And then he will make one last move." No matter how it turns out, he concluded, the imperial house will suffer irreparable damage. Nok Mokpung looked at him with pure contempt and hissed, "Evil man." The elder struggled with his thoughts. If we let him go. But if we try to stop him, knowing Nok Gi and his forces, chaos will be inevitable. Mokpung asked incredulously, "Are you telling me to watch traitors run rampant?" While a guard whispered, "That's politics, isn't it?" Nok Mokpung confronted Mokpung with a sharp look. "I've heard eunuchs are like rats, always leaving 10 holes to escape through." Once the decision was made, Nok Mokpung addressed Mokpung with a single word, "Out." Just as Mokpung and his men turned to leave, Yonho's casual voice stopped them. "May I offer you some advice?" With an expert air, he analyzed. "Your martial art, the art of fluid grace, is formidable. But as long as you maintain the art of bone shrinkage, its effectiveness diminishes." Mokpung stopped abruptly while Yonho continued. "If you really want to face me, it would be wiser to unleash that transformation." With a half-smile, Mokpung assured him, "I'll keep that in mind for next time." Yonho yawned and said, "I'd prefer there not be a next time," to which Mokpung replied confidently, "There will be." Mokpung's gaze locked onto him, adding, "At least while you keep that form," implying that Yonho was also hiding his true appearance. Yonho watched them leave with the first rays of the sun and murmured to himself, "Well, whatever." Turning to the freed group, his face softened with a slight smile. "So this is the end." Bathed in the dawn light, Nok Mokpung and the others stood tall, finally safe. Just after the crisis ended, Yonho stretched and announced with a smile, "I'm going to sleep, so I'll leave the rest to you." The young woman exploded in anger. "You're going to sleep again?" But he defended himself. "I'm entitled to full benefits. You wouldn't dare take that back, would you?" Unable to argue, she could only click her tongue in frustration. Yonho ran off shouting, "Don't wake me up, I'll sleep until tomorrow." As they watched him, a man asked, "What kind of person is that?" And the young woman replied resignedly, "I know, right." And so, while the others worked, Yonho's days passed in absolute comfort. He was simply sleeping, thinking to himself, this is the life." Delicious food was brought to his room, and no one disturbed him. It was truly a paradise on earth. The days passed quietly in his idyllic dream paradise. However, one morning, the young woman quietly entered his room while he was taking a nap. The young woman stood by the bed with her hands on her hips and coldly ordered, "Wake up." Yonho completely ignored her, turning over to continue sleeping. She gritted her teeth, knowing he was pretending. "Don't pretend you're sleeping, I know you're not." When he finally grumbled, "What do you want?" she informed him, "My father is calling you," ignoring his protests about his 7-day rest. Fed up with his excuses, she yanked his blanket with all her strength and shouted, "Get up now." The sudden tug sent him headfirst to the floor with a painful, "Ow." Shortly after, she introduced him at a closed door. "My lord, I have brought him," and a voice from inside replied, "Come in." Yonho carelessly entered the room, where Yi Chwanjia and Nok Mokpung awaited him, seated at the table. Yi Chwanjia smiled at his daughter and said, "Good job, you may go." After she left with a bow, Yonho also bowed his head in greeting. Just as the young woman was bowing to leave, Nok Mokpung's rough voice stopped her. "Not you." Yonho pointed at the confused girl and said, "He tells you to stay." "Yes, you." To which she responded, astonished me. The Inspector General was trembling from head to toe, barely suppressing his anger. Unaware of the tension, Yonho sat at the table and rubbed his head with a smile. "Ugh, my head." Yi Chwanjia tried to calm him by whispering, "Inspector General," but only received a deep sigh of frustration. In his hand, the Inspector General held a shiny gold plaque with intricate engravings. Faced with Yi Chwanjia's insistence, Nok Mokpung finally gave in with a grunt. "Fine, fine." He slammed the plaque down on the table in front of Yonho and exclaimed, "Enough already." Without hesitation, Yonho took the plaque with a satisfied smile. Nok Mokpung stared at him and asked, "Do you know what that is?" And when Yonho simply answered, "No," he exploded. "Then why the hell do you accept it without asking?" Yonho explained his reasoning with an expression of pure happiness. "It looked expensive." He told the exasperated Inspector General, "My master taught me, if it looks valuable, take it without asking," while clutching the relic. "And don't give it back." Addressing Yi Chwanjia, he added, "A man of his position wouldn't refuse a gift," and cut off Mokpung's protest. "Too late, it's already mine." Nok Mokpung exploded, banging the table. "Insolent brat, that sword is the sacred relic of the inspection. It grants you the same authority as me." Yonho held the sacred relic in his hand, with an expression of complete boredom. "Is that all?" he asked, to Mokpung's confusion. "Doesn't it have any practical benefit like buying a house? Is there any catch to it?" With a sly smile, Yonho reasoned, "Give and take, that's how the world works." Saying this leaves us at peace isn't enough for the work I've done. He made a gesture with his fingers and continued, people nowadays want something more realistic. Ha, it's so awkward I can't even say it directly. Nok Mokpung's hand trembled with anger as he understood. So, you want me to give you money instead of the relic? Yonho smiled with feigned modesty and said, well, I wouldn't put it that bluntly. I have some manners, you know. Containing his rage, Nok Mokpung's hand reached for his sword for a moment. He recalled the young man's cheekiness in trying to take his precious inkstone. Wait, this is mine too? Seems expensive. The Inspector General took a deep breath to calm the fury that was making his teeth clench. With forced calm, he explained, I'll say it once more. That sword is a sacred relic that grants you a status equal to mine. But Yonho only saw one downside as he slammed the relic onto the table. Basically, more work for me. After a quick exchange in which Yonho couldn't understand the difference between work and position, Mokpung gave up. Just accept that it's different. Yonho yielded with a condescending smile. Fine, out of respect for my elders, I will let it go. Yi Chuanjia then officially offered him the position of secret inspector in the Central Plains, which had been vacant for a long time. Upon hearing that his only compensation was the relic, Mokpung burst out again. It's a reward, not a job. I'll sell my house to pay you if necessary, stubborn turtle. Hearing the word reward, Yonho instantly relaxed. Ah, what a relief. I thought this was going to get complicated, leaving the other two men confused. The Inspector General's indignation exploded as he realized Yonho's true intentions. You were going to sell it, weren't you? After a tense moment, he asked seriously, what clan are you from and who is your master? But Yonho simply replied, I can't say. Meanwhile, Yi Chuanjia discreetly put away his precious inkstone to protect it. Nok Mokpung leaned forward, eyes narrowed. What, you won't answer because you don't trust me? His voice rose into a roar. You know my rank, and yet you pretend to hide your identity from me. Yonho looked at him calmly and replied, It's not about identity. It's, he continued, that I can't trust someone who hides their martial arts and pretends so clumsily. He directed a direct question at Mokpung. How many seconds would it take you to subdue Nok Mokpung? 5 or 3. The room seemed to transform into a chessboard as Yonho added, dancing on someone else's chessboard like this. A tense silence took over the room, with the three men trapped in a power game that had just begun. Nok Mokpung leaned back in his seat, eyes closed while an intense red energy enveloped him. In front of him, Yonho stood firm, fists clenched as a similar aura of power emanated from him. Finally, Yonho turned, his own energy shining blue, and declared, I can't stand it. The tension suddenly dissipated and Nok Mokpung asked, a drop of sweat on his forehead, Did you know that I knew martial arts? Yonho began to explain his deductions. From the start, it seemed strange to me. No matter how passionate people are about Go, it doesn't make sense that so many would travel 1,000 miles just for a game. It was obvious there was another reason. He recalled the prisoners and how it fit into the situation. A plan was already underway, and I simply appeared at the right moment. Yi Chuanjia's voice overlapped the scene. It was then that Nok Mokpung appeared and hell broke loose. At that moment, I had to make a decision. Yi Chuanjia's dilemma was revealed at that moment. Which side should I follow? Back to the present, Nok Mokpung looked at Yonho suspiciously and asked, Wasn't it obvious you should have followed us? There was a high probability that Mokpung was telling the truth. Yonho continued. Even if the letter was fake, someone like Yi Chuanjia was gathering the most influential figures in the country. His conclusion was grim. The most likely scenario, no matter how you look at it, is betrayal. The Inspector General stared at him and asked, And yet you helped us. Yonho recalled the young woman screaming his name amid the chaos. Because that girl called out to me. He admitted honestly, If I hadn't gotten involved, to be honest, I was only thinking about running away. But she, he continued, remembering her desperate face, really seemed unaware of anything. That's why I couldn't turn my back on her. Yi Chuanjia quoted her master. If you don't see the person in front of you, ideals are useless, to which Mokpung added, so you acted suspiciously to gauge my reaction. No, Yonho replied, it was because I was angry. Yonho's gaze sharpened as he analyzed Yi Chuanjia like a piece on a board. With chilling calm, he leaned forward. I'll ask you directly. He placed his hand on the table, locking eyes with Yi Chuanjia, and asked, Are you planning a betrayal? Nok Mokpung stared intently, testing his intentions. And if I said yes? With his hand on the table, he pressed, What would you do? Yonho's response was carefree. Then I could finally sleep peacefully. Even if I'm planning a betrayal? Mokpung inquired, to which Yonho replied, Should I wish you success? When asked if he had loyalty to the imperial family, Yonho was blunt. His Majesty the Emperor has never given me anything. Why should I have it? Looking at Yi Chuanjia, he added, if I had to choose, I'd rather cheer for you, Your Highness. A galaxy seemed to swirl in his eyes as he explained his logic. After all, you at least gave me gold. The Inspector General watched him silently, processing the young man's boldness and pragmatism. Suddenly, Mokpung burst into a loud laugh. Ha ha ha, I knew you were clever, but you've completely exceeded my expectations. Now serious, he clarified. You're right in your suspicions, but I swear it's not betrayal. We were just gathering forces against Nok Gi, and Yonho simply nodded. I see. Yi Chuanjia added gravely, while the image of a sinister man appeared in their minds. The problem is that Nok Gi has realized this too. The Inspector General posed a key question. Do you know why Nok Gi sent Nok Mukpung? He revealed the sinister plot while Yonho listened attentively. It was so he would die by my hand. Nok Gi's real goal was to frame him. His aim wasn't to capture me, but for me to kill Nok Mukpung. That way, he explained, he would have a pretext to reveal that I was hiding my martial arts skills and had gathered these people. We were trapped, he continued, and that's when you intervened. He bowed his head apologetically. If I offended you, I'm sorry. I never intended to use you as a pawn. Both Yuwen and I were desperate. At his plea of please, believe me, Yonho sighed resignedly. I understand. I've already said that I understand. With a glimmer of hope, Mokpung asked, so, will you accept the position of secret royal inspector? Yonho set an unnegotiable condition. Let me say this up front. I will never seek trouble on my own. Mokpung smiled wisely and accepted. I don't mind, because even if you don't want it, the world will never leave you in peace. Yonho asked skeptically, is that a curse? To which the Inspector General replied, that is the path of a hero. With a gesture of disdain, Yonho said, I'll pass. But Mokpung insisted, fate is not something you can refuse. Ending the conversation, Yonho stood up. Then I'm leaving now. Mokpung nodded, go ahead. I'm leaving today as well, and Yonho offered a final remark. I sincerely hope we never see each other again. The Inspector General smiled to himself as he watched him leave. For some reason, I have a feeling we'll see each other again very soon. Once Yonho had left, a heavy silence settled in the room between the two men. Yi Chuanjia broke the silence and asked Mokpung, what do you think of him? Admiration was evident in Mokpung's voice. He is more than I expected. I knew he was strong, but I didn't realize he was a master capable of seeing through my own arts. His mind filled with a powerful image of Yonho. I thought I had found a divine dragon, but it seems I have brought back a monster. If I'm not careful, I could be devoured. But Yi Chuanjia smiled confidently, unfazed. A risk of that magnitude is worth it. Yi Chuanjia reflected on Yonho's nature. His cunning is extraordinary. He understood the situation and waited until the very end to act, to which Mokpung added, who in the world raised such a monster? Later, the Inspector General gave a clear order to his subordinates. Investigate everything about him. Find out what family he belongs to. Understand him. That night, Yonho was relaxing alone on a rooftop, gazing at the night sky. The sudden question, are you leaving? Pulled him out of his thoughts. Seeing Yi Chuanjia standing in the courtyard, Yonho jumped agilely to join him. With an embarrassed smile, he said, I wasn't planning to leave without saying goodbye to the owner of the house who fed me and gave me shelter. Yi Chuanjia asked him directly, even if not now, you plan to leave soon, don't you? And Yonho responded simply, yes. Even so, said Yonho, sitting on the edge of the rooftop. I have seen and learned a lot during my time here. Curiosity took hold of Yi Chuanjia, who asked him, and what did you learn? Two things, Yonho replied. One, that not even scholars can live as their books say. And two, that this place, the Rulin, is much more terrifying than I imagined. Yi Chuanjia repeated the word, intrigued. Terrifying, Yonho explained. Because of all the people I've seen since I entered the Murim, I never imagined he would be in the Rulin. He pointed to his host and declared, the strongest master. Yi Chuanjia's martial arts are certainly incredible. With a knowing smile, he added, don't you think it's time to stop pretending? A blue aura enveloped Yi Chuanjia as he calmly asked, did you know? After admitting he had known from the start, Yi Chuanjia accepted Yonho's request to keep his secret so he could continue living as a scholar. Yonho then made his own request. In return, just tell me one thing, to which Yi Chuanjia nodded, speak, please. With a melancholic look, Yonho confessed, my master sent me out into the world, hoping to find justice. But all I've seen here is its ugliness. Yi Chuanjia offered his wisdom. Everyone has their own ideals, but they differ. And when those ideals collide, people realize that to reach their ideals, she concluded, They must first overcome reality. Yi Chuanjia spoke about the nature of the world. Everyone knows that the knots entangling the world must be untied, but it is a long process with no guarantees, so the impatient simply cut the knot. That, she continued, is the true nature of the conspiracies you speak of, like sacrificing one's own life or that of a child. In response to Yonho's question, is the whole world like that? Yi Chuanjia replied. The imperial palace has worse aspects, but other places are not much different. Yonho confessed his uncertainty. I don't know what my master wanted me to see. The world moves too fast for a lazy person like me to understand. Yi Chuanjia comforted him. And what is wrong with that? If the world is fast, simply follow it slowly. She offered him a new perspective. A diligent person can learn many things, but a lazy one might see them more clearly. If you decide beforehand what you are going to see and feel, she asked rhetorically, then what sense does it make? Walk at your own pace, she advised him, and look at the world with your own eyes. That way the world will show you your path. Yonho reflected on the deep advice, repeating it quietly to himself. See the world, as I am. He closed his eyes, meditating on the words as the night passed silently. As it is. Yonho cupped his hands, focusing his mind and spirit. While a bright energy gathered between his palms, a voice resonated in his mind. Feel it. Under the full moonlight, he immersed himself in deep meditation, his body enveloped in a bluish aura. In the stillness of his mind, the image of Yi Chuanjia appeared with astonishing clarity. Following the scholar's advice, Yonho deepened his concentration, sensing the world around him. Energy flowed through him, and for a moment he seemed to glimpse something beyond the ordinary. Some time later, the meditation ended, and Yonho came to, scratching his head with a perplexed air. Yi Chuanjia, who had been watching silently, asked him, Do you feel you have understood something? With a shy smile, Yonho stood up and admitted, To be honest, I'm not quite sure. Yi Chuanjia let out a laugh. Ha ha ha, that's enough. It's something that must be understood with the heart, not the mind. With their conversation finished, Yi Chuanjia turned and began to walk away. He stopped one last time to say to him, I hope that someday you find the answer you seek. Yonho silently watched as the figure of the scholar disappeared into the night. A faint and enigmatic smile appeared on Yonho's face. With a sigh, he let himself fall backward onto the cold tiles of the roof. Suddenly, a strange sensation emanated from his chest, and he wondered, could it be the inner core that my master gave me? He lifted his eyes towards the bright full moon, his mind adrift. The ghostly image of his master appeared before him, his voice echoing in his mind. Have you reached enlightenment? Yonho closed his eyes, absorbing the question as the night wind blew around him. Curling up to sleep, he answered in the silence of his heart, I'm not sure yet, master. Some time later, someone woke Yonho from his outdoor nap. Didn't you say you received the assignment? To which he sleepily replied, Yes, that's right. The camera pulls back to show Yonho sleeping on a cart full of goods, revealing that he was the assignment. Indeed, as the narration stated, why Yonho becomes the assignment. 2 weeks later, Yi Chuanjia's patience was wearing thin, seeing Yonho still sleeping at his house. Didn't you say you were leaving? He asked, to which Yonho responded with the same excuse as always. It's late, I'll leave tomorrow. Yonho added nonchalantly, I might be a bit delayed, you know. And Yi Chuanjia could only sigh, that's true, but even so. One day, Yi Chuanjia told him, Thank you for calling the Dragon Escort Agency, leaving Yonho confused. Just then, the agency members entered and asked, So, what exactly are we supposed to transport? Yi Chuanjia's daughter stepped forward and pointed decisively. That thing. Her finger pointed directly at a disbelieving Yonho, who could only point to himself. Me. Confused, the escorts looked from the young woman's accusing finger to the man sitting on the ground. But that's a person, said one of them, to which she replied disdainfully. He only looks human. In reality, he's a burden. The escort tried to explain their logistics. We have carriages for people, but right now we're only prepared for cargo. She interrupted him, offering a solution. Treat him like an animal. I'll pay you double the normal rate, just take him out of here. Faced with the man's hesitation, but there are rules. She raised the offer without hesitation, triple. The deal was sealed with a handshake and one final shouted offer, quadruple. The escort, now brimming with joy, gestured toward a stunned Yonho. This way, please. Yonho finally reacted, yelling at the young woman, Are you shipping me off like garbage? And she calmly responded, Wow, you caught on quickly. When Yi Chuanjia asked what was happening, her daughter informed her, I think it's time to get rid of this parasite. Yonho's indignation exploded. I knew the Jianghu's morals were low, but this is too much. Is this how you treat your savior? Yi Chuanjia tried to reason with his daughter. Yes, Yunji, We owe him, so in gratitude we should. But if we do it, he continued fearfully, he'll probably stay here until next year, to Yonho's horror. Yoonji crossed her arms and said to Yonho, "Basically, we're helping you," to which he replied, "And how is this supposed to be help?" She reminded him of his own plan. "You said you were going to Hubei, right? You don't want to walk there because you're too lazy, right?" Caught, Yonho could only timidly admit, "Yes." With a triumphant smile, Yoonji summed up the situation. "You travel comfortably, the agency makes money, and we get rid of you. Everyone wins." Completely convinced by her logic, Yonho admitted, "You are very convincing." Despite the assurances that the escorts were trustworthy, Yonho still doubted. "But my mother told me not to follow strangers." Shortly after, already seated in the car, Yonho stretched and said, "Well, I'm off. I didn't expect it to be so sudden." As the car started moving, he said goodbye with a "see you," and Yi Hwanjia and her daughter responded in unison, "Take care." Yoonji smiled upon seeing his expression. "You look very happy," to which Yonho replied, "Is it that obvious?" With one last look at his hosts, Yonho gave the departure order from the top of the car. "Let's go." He wasted no time getting comfortable, lying down on the cargo with his hands behind his head. The rattling of the wheels marked the beginning of his journey, leaving Yi Hwanjia and her daughter behind. Just as he was about to fall asleep, one of the escorts shouted sharply, "Hey!" Annoyed, Yonho lifted his head from where he had been resting, interrupting his break. He remembered Yoonji's energetic farewell, waving her arms as she wished him. "Take care." He muttered to himself irritably, "And you tell me that after kicking me out." In his mind, he could still hear her last words, "And stop being so lazy," and his own carefree reply, Yeah. Despite everything, Yonho stretched out happily in the carriage, enjoying the autumn landscape and the start of his new adventure. Once the carriage was out of sight, Yi Hwanjia turned to his daughter and said, "Let's go inside," to which she replied, "Yes, father." They both stopped at the threshold of their home, silently gazing at the peaceful courtyard. The young woman cast one last glance in the direction the carriage had gone. An almost imperceptible smile appeared on her lips as she remembered the strange guest. In her thoughts, she said a final goodbye to him. "Farewell, strange lazy boy." Meanwhile, on the road, the leader of the Swift Dragon escort agency, Gok Bihang, was questioning his men. "So the cargo you're transporting?" His gaze settled on the figure of Yonho sleeping peacefully. "Is this?" Upon confirmation from his subordinate, the leader exploded. "Is this a joke? Escorting a person requires far more preparation." The man excused himself. "We wanted to reject it, but the request came directly from the Grand Hanam Institute." Another escort asked, "How long has he been like this?" And the first replied with a sigh, "Since we left the estate." The leader of the escort, Gok Bihang, watched Yonho with a mix of irritation and amazement. "It's impressive. Doesn't it hurt at all?" One of his men reminded him of the strange instructions. "They said if we feed him like an animal, he won't cause trouble," to which another added, "I still don't understand it." After a failed attempt to wake him, an escort lost his patience. He pulled his hair hard and shouted, "Hey!" finally getting a response. Yonho opened his eyes and asked indifferently, "What?" Gok Bihang formally introduced himself, to which Yonho responded with a simple "and." "This is a cargo trip, it will be uncomfortable," Bihang warned, but Yonho downplayed it. "Don't worry, I'm here as merchandise, not as a person." Despite Bihang's warnings, Yonho remained optimistic. "It's fine. I just have to stay still and you all will take me to my destination." With a hand gesture, Yonho gave the order to move, to the surprise of the sweaty leader. 5 days after leaving the Hanam Institute, a loud yawn from Yonho broke the silence of the journey. Yonho stretched with a yawn, completely fed up with the monotonous trip. "I'm getting tired of this," he complained inwardly. "If I'm awake, I fall asleep, and if I sleep, my damn teacher haunts me in dreams with his training." The mere thought of the mythical arts of dream training exhausted him. A terrible worry seized him. "How long will this last? It can't be for my whole life, right?" Deciding not to think about it anymore, he let himself fall back onto the load with a sigh. It doesn't matter." Suddenly, Gok Bihang's authoritative voice broke the calm. "Wait." The cart came to a sudden stop on a narrow forest path, and tension filled the air. The escort leader shouted into the thicket, "Who goes there?" "I am Gok Bihang from the Swift Dragon Escort Agency, and I request a meeting." From his position, Yonho opened one eye and thought curiously, "Bandits." After a long silence with no response, Bihang's concern grew. "No one comes out. This isn't good." Gok Bihang's mind raced, analyzing the tense silence. If they're delaying like this, either they're novices or someone truly dangerous is after the cargo. He gripped the hilt of his sword, dismissing the first option. "I can't clearly sense their presence. They're not mere amateurs." he decided to give one last warning. I'll say it again. I am Gok Biheng from the Swift Dragon Escort Agency. Come out or I'll take it as a declaration of war. Finally, a crackling sound in the thicket broke the silence. A burly man in a red robe, with a huge sword on his back, appeared before them. He stood defiantly in front of the carriage, forcing the escorts to draw their weapons. Gok Biheng watched him cautiously, not recognizing him. With a show of strength, the man drove his heavy sword into the ground. He introduced himself with an arrogant smile. I am Ping Dojak from the Ping clan of Hubei. Biheng, though nervous, stood firm and made a formal bow. I am Gok Biheng from the Swift Dragon Escort Agency. What brings you here? Ping Dojak addressed Gok Biheng urgently. My enemies are chasing me and I cannot lose them. Please help me. From the carriage, Yonho observed the newcomer and thought with apprehension. He could become a threat to the Jianghu. Later, a young escort would remember this day and begin his story. This is how I met. He would go on to describe a formidable man, the guy who slammed the door in your face, and he would end his tale with the name that terrified him, Ping Dojun. But at that moment, on the forest path, the narrator focused on a future unknown to the protagonist. At that instant, he too, as Yonho opened his eyes, the ominous narration continued. Did not know. Ping Dojak looked up at the sky, his determination hardening. A strange sensation ran through Yonho, a chill that made him clench his teeth. The narrator concluded the premonition, that this encounter would push Ping Dojak into a river of misfortunes. Gok Biheng recalled the reputation of the Ping clan. They can be scatterbrains, but when it comes to cultivation, no one surpasses them. His concern grew upon seeing Ping Dojak's seriousness. If someone from that family asks for help, it must be serious. While his men hesitated, Dojak insisted. They are chasing me. Just help me get down this mountain and I will reward you. Finally, Biheng made a decision. We will help you. For now, hide quickly in that barrel, to which Dojak nodded. A smile of relief and gratitude appeared on Ping Dojak's face. All of this happened under Yonho's indifferent gaze, who watched from his comfortable spot in the carriage. As an escort helped the man get into the barrel, he quietly thanked him. Biheng approached Yonho and whispered sternly, Don't make a single sound, and Yonho nodded. Understood. Yonho rolled his eyes, thinking to himself, what a soft heart. As the carriage resumed its journey, his thought concluded. It's not that I hate that about him, really. Ping Dojak's voice echoed from inside the barrel. Sorry for dragging you all into danger. If we get out of this, I will reward every one of you. Yonho murmured with his eyes closed. What good is a reward if we're dead? To which Dojak could only start to say, well. One of the bodyguards looked at the barrel with resentment, thinking, You have no shame, risking everyone's life for yours. Yonho silenced him with a sharp order. Enough already, be quiet, and the bodyguard reluctantly obeyed. Understood. Behind the wheel, Gok Biheng couldn't hide the tension on his face as they moved forward. A false hope grew inside him. We're almost out of the mountain. It seems no one has come for him. Have we made it? Just then a figure jumped into the middle of the road, shouting, Stop! And the carriage braked sharply. In the blink of an eye, they found themselves surrounded by a group of masked assassins. Their leader, a man with a scar over his eye, watched them silently, his sword drawn. A cold sweat ran down Biheng as he recognized them. Are those the bandits of the Green Forest? Gok Biheng stepped forward and greeted the bandits with a respectful bow. I am Gok Biheng of the Kweryang Escort Agency. Greetings to the heroes of the Green Forest. The bandit leader got straight to the point. Have you seen a young man dressed in red? To which Biheng quickly replied, Red clothes. No, we haven't seen anyone like that. With a threatening look, the leader warned him. Are you sure? If you lie, you won't leave here unscathed. Biheng tried to appeal to logic. The Kweryang Agency has always had good relations with you. Why would we risk ourselves for a stranger? Just then a bandit pointed at Yonho. And what is that thing? Startling Biheng. From his comfortable position, Yonho answered the question with a bored expression. I am the escort's object. The strange answer left the bandits completely confused. What the hell does that mean? Quickly, Biheng whispered an excuse to the leader. Ah, he's out of his mind. We took him to a clinic. Don't pay him any attention. The leader seemed to accept it. As you said, you have no reason to fight, and Biheng nodded nervously. Not a reason at all. But the leader's gaze hardened. The problem has already started because of that bastard. Didn't I ask if you had seen a man in red? Trying to point out an inconsistency, Yonho said, But I'm not wearing red, while Biheng stammered. He's not wearing red, right? The answer was a knife to Biheng's throat as the bandit leader hissed. Are you mocking me? Panic seized Biheng. Did he know all along? Did he know we were hiding Ping Doja? Then let's do it, said the leader with terrifying calm. He announced his cruel method of interrogation. I will kill one of you after another. I bet before the third falls, someone will confess. His finger pointed at a trembling escort. We'll start with you. Who wants to die first? You. Answer me, demanded the leader. Did you see a young man in red? Under the threat of your life depends on it, the terrified man lied. And no, I didn't see anyone. The leader acted without mercy. Then you can die, and attacked the man who was screaming in terror. As the guard fell, a cry of rage and helplessness escaped from Gok Bihang. Damn it. A calm and clear voice broke the tension. He's right here, to Gok Bihang's surprise. The bandit leader spun around sharply toward the source of the voice. Both the guards and bandits stood frozen, not understanding what was happening. On top of the cart's load, Yonho had risen, now dressed in a green robe over his clothes. He sat cross-legged with his arms folded, watching the scene from above with complete calm. The bandit leader shouted at him furiously. What did you just say? Unfazed, Yonho kicked the barrel and repeated, He's right here. He clarified for everyone present. The man you're looking for. A small smile appeared on his face as he added, That bastard Ping. Then he kicked the barrel, saying, Hey, they found you, come out, before reassuring the guards. Don't worry, nothing is sillier than dying for someone else. The furious voice of Ping Dojuk echoed from the barrel, directed at Yonho. What the hell are you doing, kid? Are you going to wait for everyone to die? Facing Yonho's silence, Dojuk decided to come out and confront the bandits himself. He emerged from the barrel with an expression of grim determination. The leader of the bandits mocked him. Are you trying to play the hero at the end? You could have escaped. To which Dojuk replied, If I hadn't, you would have killed them all. With a powerful voice, he declared, I may, Ping Dojuk, not be a righteous warrior, but I will not allow innocent people to die because of me. He turned to Gok Bihang and said, Thank you for everything, but this is my problem. Leave and you will be safe, assuring him that he would be fine. With a defiant look at his enemies, he added, Anyway, we couldn't have avoided them. Gok Bihang was left speechless, visibly affected by the young master's decision. Finally, he gave the order to his men to retreat. Let's go, and wished Dojuk, May fortune be with you in battle. But just as the cart started to move, a calm voice stopped them all. Wait, Yonho stopped Bihang. You can't leave. Why? Asked the leader, to which Yonho explained, If you leave, they will attack us and kill us all. Faced with Bihang's confusion, Yonho sighed. Are you really that clueless, boss? The Green Forest doesn't want a war with the Ping clan, so they can't leave witnesses. The terrible logic continued. If word gets out that they killed a Ping, the entire clan will storm this mountain. To prevent that, they will slaughter us all. Even the bandits were startled to hear it, while Bihang admitted, That makes sense. You're right, I hadn't thought of that. Yonho looked at him incredulously. You really hadn't thought of that? Prompting Bihang to burst out. Damn crazy bastard. Ping Dojuk tried to take control. I'll handle this. I'll hold them off while you guys escape. Yonho mocked his heroism. How convenient. You drag us into this mess and now you want to take responsibility. How long do you think you'd last? He continued disdainfully. You're just a drowning man dragging us all down with you. Bihang asked desperately, Then what do we do? And Yonho explained how futile it was to run. They know who we are. They'll hunt us down anyway. With terrifying calm, Yonho gave the only possible solution. We fight. If we fight now, at least that drowning man will fight with us, and Bihang understood. I see. You're right. The bandit leader asked one last question. You're really not going to let us go? To which Dojuk responded firmly. I've said all I need to say. Without another word, the leader gave the order. Attack. Ping Dojuk charged into battle alone, shouting, Don't blame me for your deaths. The sound of clashing steel filled the forest clearing as Dojuk faced his enemies. As he fought for his life, a bitter thought overwhelmed him. They say the martial world is vast. He blocked two swords at once and continued. If I had known how deadly it was, I would never have entered it. He knocked down an attacker, but his own arrogance had blinded him. Ever since I was praised as a rising star, arrogance took hold of me without my noticing. That arrogance had been like a poison, and now he realized his mistake. Ah, all of this is my fault. Surrounded and outnumbered, despair took over him. Because of me, everyone here will die. A bandit lunged to deliver the finishing blow, shouting, It's over, kid. Accepting his imminent death, Ping Dojuk closed his eyes and silently apologized. I'm sorry, to everyone. But just as the bandit's sword was about to reach him, a flash of blue light intercepted it. A single ghost stone, imbued with incredible energy, deflected the blade and sent out a shockwave that made the attacker scream. The bandit was thrown backward, disarmed, while the small white stone rolled innocently across the ground. Ping Dojuk stood open-mouthed, unable to comprehend what had just happened. His gaze shifted to the cart, where he found Yonho calmly playing with a Go bowl. Yonho looked up at the group of stunned fighters and said with a half-smile, "You guys are quite a case."